The Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos, the final round of the 2006 Formula One World Championship. But as we've been saying in our race build-up, it's a lot more than just the race that will decide the World Championship. Waiting in the commentary box for the last time this season, Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Well, James Allen on his own, actually, Steve. Martin Brundle nowhere to be seen, lost amongst that enormous crowd out there on the grid and in the grandstands here. Complete capacity crowd to see a Brazilian driver on pole position. Felipe Massa, there he is. Well, Michael Schumacher is 90 minutes from retirement, and if he wins the race today with Fernando Alonso not scoring a World Championship point, he will have his 8th World Drivers' Championship to stick in the scrapbook. Does that sound like a tall order to you? Well, that's precisely the result that we have had in 2 of the last 3 Grand Prix in what has been a vintage season of Formula One racing. So is it any more unlikely here on the last day of the season than it was in Monza, where Alonso's engine failed and Michael Schumacher won the race, or in Suzuka, where Schumacher's engine failed and Alonso won the race? The one thing I would say is it's much hotter today here in Brazil than was predicted. They were expecting it to be around 20 degrees maximum. It's actually 24, and the track temperature is 45 degrees, and that plays into the hands of the Bridgestone tyres on the Ferrari. And also 1 or 2 teams, I believe, are a little bit concerned about cooling. They're not allowed to change the cars in any way after qualifying, and it was a lot colder yesterday. So we might see a few engines in trouble as this race goes on, simply because their engines are overheating. Well, as it's been all season, this is Alonso's championship to lose. On paper, the fact that he starts the race today from 4th on the grid with Michael Schumacher 10th after some problems with the fuel pressure system on his Ferrari yesterday in qualifying may seem to stack the odds very much in Alonso's favour. But as I say, that Bridgestone Ferrari package is extremely fast, not just in qualifying, but we've seen it in the long runs as well, the practice sessions. And both Massa and Michael Schumacher are sitting on very, very fast race cars. Look how close it was on the grid. Alonso there in 4th place, and Ralf Schumacher separated by just 1/10 of a second, and yet 4 cars were covered by that spread. Through, you can see Kubica and Michael Schumacher then, 9th and 10th. Jenson Button sadly outside the top 10. Real shame for him. The Honda, a very quick car around here, much faster than they expected it to be. They've had a very strong end to the season, Honda, and Jenson Button certainly looking to carry that momentum through to next year's World Championship, where he feels he can be a contender. Sadly, yesterday, Jenson suffered problems with traction control that cost him 7/10 of a second a lap, and that's why he's down in 14th. David Coulthard, you see, in 18th there. He had a difficult time in qualifying as well. Well, whatever happens, Martin, in the next 90 minutes, this has been a momentous day for the sport. It's not every day that a 7 times world champion hangs up his helmet. One of the greats, if not the greatest driver in the history of the sport, is retiring, and the sport is changed forever by him, really. I'm sure in the course of the race we'll talk a lot about what he's done for Formula One and, well, his legacy and that kind of thing. But what's the atmosphere like down on the grid there?
Well, total pandemonium from what I can see. I mean, people are not really fully sure what's going on. Drivers obviously distracted from what they would normally be doing, their standard preparations on the grid. But it is an unusual and special day, as you say. It's been a pretty special season in many respects. There's so many levels of interest out there that we've covered them in the pre-show today. But Michael's retirement, possible World Championship. Don't forget, he can win this World Championship today, and he's got a great car underneath him. It's going to be fascinating to watch him try to come through the pack. Alonso can throw it away to a certain extent. Surely he's got a car there that'll get him into the top 8 if it keeps running. So the World Championship, the Raikkonen goes off to Ferrari, Alonso goes off to McLaren. As we've covered, we're losing Michelin, we're losing Cosworth, and just so many levels of interest out there to talk about and observe this afternoon. Plus, I think we're going to have a great race.
And one really interesting one as well is this battle at the front here. Felipe Massa on pole position at Ferrari. Next year, his teammate will be the man alongside him there, Kimi Raikkonen, in the McLaren Mercedes. As you say, his last outing for that team. I remember back here in 2003 when Juan Pablo Montoya had his last outing for Williams BMW against Raikkonen. Those two had an amazing fight throughout the course of the Brazilian Grand Prix, the final round of that championship, really for the bragging rights for the following year, because Montoya was going to be Raikkonen's teammate at McLaren. Montoya won that race, and it was a spectacular fight. And I know for a fact, talking to the McLaren mechanics, that Raikkonen has exactly that mindset. He wants the bragging rights going into the winter over Felipe Massa. At the moment, you'd have to see, based on their qualifying performance, the Ferrari is the faster car, but the pole sitter has not won the Brazilian Grand Prix for 8 years. There is no such thing as a clear run to the flag at Interlagos. It's as chaotic a race as the country around it.
Well, 4 of the last 5 years have been rain interrupted as well, but the sky is looking extremely clear. And the ticker tape on the track is seriously bad news. You don't need too much of that in your radiator intakes. The cars are so close to the edge on cooling. Cooling costs speed because it's drag. There's bags and plastic bags floating around there, and there'll be stuff like that all the way around the track. And so they minimise the cooling to save the drag, to give them better top speed, and therefore they're all right on the ragged edge for that. And a plastic bag in your side pod will cook the engine unquestionably. So difficult moment there for the drivers to try to avoid that little lot as they try to get some brake temperature now and tyre temperature to give themselves a good slingshot off the grid, and also have something to stop the car with when they get down to that tricky first corner. It's a long run down to turn 1 here, and we've seen many accidents going in there.
Let's look there at the Constructors' Championship. That will be decided today as well. 9 points in favour of Renault at the moment. There are an awful lot of different permutations as to how that one could finish up. But certainly, if you can get both Renaults up or near the podium, that probably will do it for them, even with a Ferrari 1-2. But many a slip twixt cup and lip. 71 laps here of Interlagos, and well, the stats aren't really in Schumacher's favour. He's only won 1 race in his whole career, 248 Grand Prix starts, in which he qualified 10th or lower on the grid. So he's going to have to pull out something superhuman to win this race today, but such has been his career, I would not bet against it. Incidentally, on the way up here, I bumped into a Welsh guy who was in the grandstands, and he's been to all of the last 3 races of Schumacher's career. He heard he was announced he was retiring at Monza, and he's made an effort to go round the world, spent all his money, because that's what Michael Schumacher meant to him. And I have a feeling there are a lot of people out there in these grandstands today, and I'm sure many of you at home as well, who feel the same way about Schumacher, that his loss to the sport will be a serious loss to you. And it's really a very special and odd day in many ways.
Well, a graphic picture there of just what a slope it is on the start. The back end of the field actually are downhill, which is just as difficult, because if you move before the lights go out, you will get penalised. There's a sensor in every one of those grid slots, and they're carefully analysed after this 22-car pack gets away.
So, Michael Schumacher's last 200 miles at the wheel of a Formula 1 car will get underway when Charlie Whiting there releases the button and the lights go out. Go! Raikkonen on the right, Massa on the left. The Brazilian Grand Prix of 2006 is underway. Look at Jarno Trulli. Alonso goes down the inside of him, but he's very cautious, Alonso, and it's given Barrichello the chance to attack Alonso, but Alonso keeps the line. Michael Schumacher gets squeezed out there a little bit. The 2 BMWs are still in front of him, as is Ralf Schumacher as they head down the back straight.
Schumacher will get a tremendous tow behind those 3 cars, the 2 BMWs and his brother, but he had nowhere to go and use it. Are the BMWs going to tangle? They do. They just let Michael through. We've got a Williams off too. It looked like Nico Rosberg. So Michael just taking places hand over fist as the 2 BMW drivers squabbling over the same piece of tarmac, and the rear wing missing then from that Williams. It's Webber.
Mark Webber in trouble then in his final Grand Prix outing for the Williams team. And the front 4, very much as they were off the grid. It's Massa, Raikkonen, Trulli, Alonso. Massa pulling out at the moment from Kimi Raikkonen. Jarno Trulli in 3rd place, Alonso 4th, 5th Barrichello, 6th Giancarlo Fisichella, 7th Ralf Schumacher. That front 7 is the same as it was off the start line then. The only real winner, Michael Schumacher, up into 8th place ahead of the 2 BMWs. Also Jenson Button the winner. He's had a great start.
Schumacher also getting past one of the Hondas down there, so making a lot of ground up in the early part of the race is Michael Schumacher. He came over the line in 7th place.
Yeah, it's his brother Ralf that he passed down the back straight. So he's up into 7th place. Ralf Schumacher down into 8th, but Jenson Button is 10th as we have a big accident there of Nico Rosberg. So both Williams looks like involved in incidents on the first lap of this Grand Prix, and that's had a big impact, that car.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Rosberg who was off the road first on that first lap, followed by another problem for Mark Webber. We've got the safety car deployed, so the race will be neutralised. Webber back into the pits. They can put a new rear wing on that. It does, because it carries so much load. It goes into the gearbox. It takes quite a while, and especially if the floor is broken. With the safety car then on the racetrack to clear up the damage. If there's a lot of shards of carbon fibre, it can soon puncture these Formula One tyres. They're tubeless, of course. And, oh, that's a big one then for Rosberg. And up onto the pit straight. Big, big accident. That'll take a lot of clearing up. Suspect something is broken there, because the car just turned right where it would normally be sweeping to the left-hand side. So, safety car situation. We're on lap 2. Massa leads for Ferrari, followed by Raikkonen, Trulli, Alonso, Barrichello is 5th.
Because financial solutions have no borders or boundaries,
This is lap 4 of the Brazilian Grand Prix from Interlagos. We're under safety car conditions due to a couple of incidents on the opening lap involving both of the Williams cars. Nico Rosberg has had a heavy accident and is out of this Grand Prix. And while they clear the mess up, we've got the safety car. Mark Webber is also out of this Grand Prix. And let's take another look at how it all happened at the start.
This is from onboard Michael Schumacher. He got a good run. Put it down the inside, but it all got too close for comfort there up against the two BMWs and his brother Ralph. They're touching there almost. Suddenly, Michael then, with a tremendous toe down that back straight, but nowhere to go with it, puts himself on the outside, the normal racing line.
Also, we have to keep them warm, keep the tires warm.
Kubica comes up the inside there of and takes the Heidfeld wide. Then Rosberg gets into the back of Webber, and Webber, minus a rear wing, struggles back to the pits. Rosberg with a damaged suspension, almost certainly, that put him heavily into the barrier, and then all of the debris coming back onto the racing line. He's out of the car and okay, but a lot of rubbish up there. They have to keep the tyres and brakes warm, but the critical thing now is Michael Schumacher, after a brilliant first 2 laps, is right up behind Fisichella and Alonso. Who can keep the tyres warm and who can get down to that turn 1 and be defensive? Fisichella's got a key role to play here, and Ted is down in the pits.
Yeah, just a quick one at Williams. Their intention was to try and repair Mark Webber's rear wing and send him out again, but Patrick Head had a look at it. He said there was damage to the rear crash structure and the rear suspension, so he called it out. He said, no, you're not going to get out. So it's Patrick calling the shots, by the way. Sam Michael's not here this weekend.
Neither is Frank Williams, so Patrick Head presiding over a pretty sad end to the season and what has been a very difficult season for the Williams team. Both cars retired from the opening stages of this Grand Prix, having taken each other out effectively. The only bit of good news for Williams to come out of the weekend is an announcement of a new title sponsor for next year, which gives them much needed boost in cash and direction forward, but a lot of changes technically in the technical department at Williams for next year, and so we'll see whether they can bounce back in 2007 with a better package.
Old-fashioned system of clearing the track up there, and of course that's both Cosworths out of the race as well. What a tragic end there after that glorious career of Cosworth, dating back, when was it, 67, when they first came into Formula One, so many world championships with so many great drivers. I think you've got some more detail on that, James.
Yeah, 39 years of racing Cosworth, 176 Grand Prix victories, 13 drivers' championships, and what an amazing history. They're a small British company based in Northampton, a lot of hard-working, very dedicated professionals. There can't be many Grand Prix drivers of the last 20 years who haven't, at some stage in their career, and I know you're one of them, been powered by a Cosworth engine. Mark Blundell is another. Michael Schumacher is another.
Senna used the engines, and yeah, we've all passed through a phase of using a Cosworth V8 engine, and some of them, of course, V10s too. So let's take a look at this then. Massa was leading comfortably. This has probably harmed him more than anybody. Raikkonen solidly in second place. The only people out there unhappy with these hot track temperatures, hotter than expected, are Renault. They went for a cooler running tyre. Everybody else was looking forward to more of a sort of standard temperature here.
Nick, telemetry data looks okay, so front wing is definitely okay.
So what they know...
Flying away. So something has come off my car.
So what they're doing is they're reading the suspension loads, and they're telling him, look, your front and rear wing loadings are looking okay. There was contact with Ralf Schumacher, we saw that. So they're telling Heidfeld, we think your car's fine. The safety car is in this lap.
So let's take a look at the situation then. Massa is at the front, Raikkonen is behind him, Trulli third in the Toyota, also on the Bridgestone tyre, same as Felipe Massa. Then you've got the two Renaults and then Michael Schumacher. Alonso, Fisichella, Michael Schumacher, but we've seen all along that the Bridgestone is really electric on the single opening lap, so I would say that Michael Schumacher will be giving Fisichella quite a bit of grief off this restart.
Now surely they'll be telling Massa to back them up as well. They don't want to string this out too much. They need to keep the Renaults tight and give Schumacher a run at them. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if Massa's not getting a bit of instruction. He's really paying a lot of attention to us, another matter. But there then are the two Renaults in front of Michael Schumacher, and he'll want to be getting it. Yeah, they're back in the pack up now.
There was a little concern earlier before the race started. This resurfaced area at the apex of the corners apparently was starting to break up with some of the support races we had here. The big Porsches going around at the hotter temperatures today. So that's something we need to keep an eye on as the race unfolds as well. The safety car then pulling away as Massa, you can see, backing the pack up exactly as instructed. And that means, look at the two Renaults being pushed right back into the clutches of Michael Schumacher.
What's really difficult here is it's such a long run up the hill that you mustn't pass the safety car. Massa becomes the safety car once that pulls off, and it's such a long way up there. The performance of these cars is so amazing, and he's got away with it nicely, actually. Good start for Raikkonen. Where is Michael Schumacher? That was pretty touch and go, but he got away with it. Schumacher, is he anywhere near the back of Fisichella? He's having a look, but he's not close enough.
No, down into the first corner then goes Schumacher, right up the back of Fisichella, who seems to be playing a slightly tactical game here and letting Alonso get away from him, but a little bit of back end out for Fisichella onto the back straight where Schumacher is so fast. As we saw on the opening lap, he's right in the slipstream of the Renault, going for the outside line as he did the first time round with the two BMWs, but Fisichella's been around a few times before, but Schumacher is so much faster. Just look at him. And he's very aggressive here.
Fisichella chose to go defensive quite early. I think he was right to do that, but it's left him with dirty tyres and slightly offline. But he's very much getting the job done. That's what he's got to do. Keep Schumacher back and away from Fernando Alonso. But I tell you what, I don't think it'll be for very long. Michael Schumacher will get his slipstream on the top straight here, and he looks so much more confident on the brakes. Sure, he's got a chance down into turn one. Once again then, Massa just streaming away at the front. Raikkonen slightly under pressure. They're all then on Michelin's there, apart from the Toyota and Ferrari. And Michael, quite a long way behind on the exit of Young Cow. Can he pick up a tow from the back of that Renault?
Well, we've had 4 laps under the safety cars. That means they'll be able to go a little bit longer on the fuel before the first round of pit stops, as Alonso has a good look at Jarno Trulli, obviously getting impatient now behind the Italian. Into the CNRS then goes Alonso. Massa leading, pulling away, 2.5 seconds now from Raikkonen in second place. Trulli third, but under a lot of pressure from the Renault of Fernando Alonso, bidding to become a back-to-back Formula One world champion, something that very, very few men have ever done. Meanwhile, the 7-time champion, Michael Schumacher, in his final Grand Prix before retiring from the sport, is currently in 6th place behind the Renault of Giancarlo Fisichella and looking very menacing indeed. Behind them, Rubens Barrichello and Jenson Button, the two Hondas. We'll keep an eye on them because Button has been very quick all weekend, and I wouldn't bet against him finishing somewhere near the podium if he can get past his teammate.
This is looking superb for Michael Schumacher. He's got to get up to P2 because, of course, Massa, his teammate, he'd be like pushing on an open door if he can get up into second place. Everybody else has got to stop him from doing that. But Michael is only 3 seconds off that second place and easily maintaining their pace. Massa, 2.5 seconds faster than anybody else on the racetrack. This lot are going to be under pressure. And look at that, Schumacher around the outside of Fisichella. Fisichella's got to hang on to it. Schumacher will need to go left immediately. Surely we're going to see the Renault slithering up the inside. We do, but he's not been brave enough. He's released Michael. Michael's got completely out of shape. I wonder if that's a bit of a left rear puncture there for Michael Schumacher.
There was some contact, definitely, Martin. There was definitely a bit of contact with Fisichella, and now it looks like Schumacher's lost some pace down the back straight. He's checking the car out. Look at the left rear. He's got a puncture. He touched Fisichella's front wing, as you say, and he's losing places if the two Hondas go past him, and it's all going pear-shaped for Michael Schumacher. but I really want to see that again. Just watch the body language of Fisichella's car in that incident. It was very, very interesting.
Well, I didn't quite see contact, but we'll have another look at it. But of course, there has been a lot of debris on the racetrack, and suddenly we saw Michael struggling in the right-handers, and it's a long way home from there. It's over 2 miles he's had to go with that puncture. He's got to hope the carcass stays on the sidewalls of the tyre, otherwise it starts ripping the bodywork off the rear. Ferrari ready then. But, well, we've just sang how good it was looking for Michael Schumacher. Suddenly, it's all gone horribly wrong.
And the calmest-looking man in the place is Ross Brawn, the Ferrari technical director, coming down off the wall there. That is the flaying carcass of the rear tyre of Michael Schumacher in his final Grand Prix. A career peppered with drama, has a final drama in his final race. What can he do from here? We're only on lap 10 of 71. We can certainly expect a fight back, but he's now 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th places he falls to as the rest of the field streams through. Massa, meanwhile, is in the lapping in the mid-113s, 2 seconds faster than the Michelin cars behind him of Raikkonen, Alonso and Fisichella.
Well, we've always said how incredibly lucky Michael Schumacher's been. His engine's always blown up on the in-lap, not the first lap of a Grand Prix, but after the Grand Prix's finished. Ted is down at Ferrari.
Yeah, it hasn't done that much damage, actually. A look of total resignation at Ross Brawn's face. He comes round to the back, but they are having a bit of a hard time getting that tyre off. Those sort of frisbees on the rear wheels didn't help. They put a new set of Bridgestones on either way. Doesn't look like there's much damage to Michael Schumacher, but not a good day for the Schumachers. Ralph's also in. Looks like he's retired.
Yeah, Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota started from 7th place, was passed early on by his brother and by Jenson Button, and he, as you say, he has gone into retirement. So the 2 Williams and the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher out of this Grand Prix. Massa leads at the moment, still lapping very quickly in the 113s. Raikkonen has no response. He's 6.5 seconds behind him, and Alonso is up into 3rd place. Jarno Trulli has gone backwards through the field. Let's see what happened to him, but no sign of him. So both Toyotas in trouble here, and that puts Alonso up into a podium place, 3rd then for the world champion.
Yeah, we're saying Michael's luck has finally run out, sadly, here and in the last Grand Prix course in Japan. And really fascinated to see if there was contact with Fisichella. It's highly possible. Fisichella had to come back up the inside and defend that position. And Massa then, he can't be too far behind Michael Schumacher to lap him. And of course, if he gets anywhere near the back of Michael will start getting the blue flags. So Button is up to P6, and there is the Toyota of Jarno Trulli cruising straight into the garage. So both Toyotas, both Williams out of the Grand Prix.
Jarno Trulli caps off what's been a very difficult season for him last year, a serious contender, frequently running in podium positions in the Toyota. Expected more from 2006, expected race victories. Instead, it's gone the other way, scrapping over 5th and 6th places in the Constructors' Championship is not what Trulli had in mind, and another retirement for him means that Jenson Button is now up into 6th place, having started 14th on the grid. And as I said before, Jenson's got a very, very quick car under him. Delighted with it in free practice. Really thought he could do something here, but was held up yesterday with problems in the traction control system. An electronics glitch meant that he wasn't able to qualify as he wanted to. Let's have another look at this Fisichella incident.
There we go. Fisichella came down the inside. Could have just been the front wing end fence. They have a radius on them and a thickness that stops them from cutting tyres. But either Michael picked that up in the debris of Rosberg's accident, or it is possible that that front wing end fence just touched his rear tyre. Difficult call, that one. I don't think you could blame Fisichella for it. He had to defend that position against Michael.
Well, Ralf Schumacher is out of this Grand Prix, one of 4 retirements early on. He's talking now with Louise Goodman.
Ralph, what's gone wrong?
Well, we are not sure yet. I mean, there's something wrong mechanically on the back end of the car. Seems to be a similar problem for both cars, so we'll have to find out after.
Thanks, Ralph.
What Ferrari have got to do now is slow Massa down a little bit. They do not need him getting within range of Michael. He's 6 or 7 tenths faster than Michael. Michael's got more fuel on board. He might just bring himself back into play. It's going to be extremely hard from here. But we have seen him pull master strokes like this before. But as soon as Michael passes 3 blue flags, he's got to back off and let the race leader through. Now, that would be a disaster for him.
Well, he's lapping unbelievably quickly, Michael Schumacher. He's also in the 113s. The two Ferraris, the only cars in the 113s at the moment. So he's carrying, I don't think they refueled him at that stop when they put some new tyres on. It wasn't the right time just tactically for him to do that, but Schumacher's going quickly, albeit 70 seconds now behind his teammate, the race leader. Nico Rosberg is also out of this Grand Prix, and Louise has found him.
Nico, just talk us through what happened with you.
Yeah, well, I was obviously pushing hard in the first lap to just gain up some places, and I was behind Mark on the outside. And I don't know what happened in front of him, but he braked very late, like an extra bit in the corner, and that's when I hit him. So I'm disappointed, obviously, for the team, because it's really the worst way to end the year. But so I'm really sorry for the team, and anyway, now we got the winter in front of us, and I'm going to do my best to push hard with the team, try and improve things for next year.
That damage to your car obviously caused that accident. It was a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I don't know what happened, because I only felt that the front wing was gone, so I had understeer, and then I think something broke, and that sent me off.
Thanks, Nico.
Well, a Brazilian has not won the Brazilian Grand Prix for 13 years, since 1993, when the late, great Ayrton Senna took his second victory here at Interlagos. It's a very difficult race for Brazilians to win. Even Senna, with all his coolness, found it very emotional racing here. Very hard to keep a lid on it all. It took him a long time to win his first race here. Massa now is lapping impeccably. Every single lap in the low 1 minute 13s. He is driving exquisitely and closing up on the back of his teammate Michael Schumacher. David Coulthard's touring slowly.
Yeah, that's a shame. He got up to P12 from 18th on the grid. Was running nicely. But at the end, then, for the looks of it, of a dismal weekend for David Coulthard. He's really struggled to stop that car leaping around on the bumps for some reason. Massa, 1 minute 13 still. It's Raikkonen that's not lapping particularly quickly at the moment. He's about a second a lap slower than Massa, as we saw Trulli getting out of the Toyota garage there. And this is the problem that Ferrari face. Where is Michael? He is 71 seconds behind and lapping quite a bit slower than Massa. I don't know if they put fuel in. I'm surprised they didn't put fuel in if they didn't, because they were 11, 12 laps into the race. It would be worth doing, turning it into a three-stopper and trying to recover some of the time lost while Michael was cruising around with that punctured tyre.
Well, time will tell. There's a lot more to happen here. As things stand, it's looking good for Alonso and it's looking good for Renault. Massa leads the race for Ferrari, but Alonso only needs to score any kind of point and he's the world champion. And even then, he needs Michael Schumacher to win the race, which is not looking at all likely at the moment. 71 seconds as he is behind the race leaders. Renault touring round in 3rd and 4th places at the moment, and that would give them the constructors if they could keep it. But 57 laps still to go, and an awful lot still could happen. Lap 18 of the Brazilian Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher's final Formula One race, and he's in trouble. He's down in 17th place, 70 seconds behind the race leader, his teammate Felipe Massa, as a result of a left rear puncture. He was climbing through the field looking very menacing and was going for a pass on 4th place Giancarlo Fisichella when he got a left rear puncture, and that has put him really out of contention. Renault are 3 and 4 at the moment and looking good for the constructors. Jarno Trulli is one of a number of retirements. Both of the Toyotas, David Coulthard and both of the Williams are out of this race. And let's hear now from Trulli. He's with Louise Goodman.
Yeah, no, great move on the restart, but what happened after that? Ralph said some kind of mechanical problem.
Yeah, we both had the same problem. The rear central element of the rear suspension failed, so basically the car had no body control and was jumping around. We had to retire, and it's a shame because both cars were very competitive this weekend. I was attacking Raikkonen, and it was just a matter of getting the tires in the temperature, and really bad.
Not the first time that's happened, is it?
Yeah, Indianapolis, we have had this problem. Probably on this kind of track, very bumpy track, it was hard for it.
Thanks, Jarno.
So under the duress then of the racing conditions and the high downforce at the end of the straight and the bumps, they've had, unusually, both cars have failed with exactly the same suspension problem. Sounds like the central damper that then lets the bottom of the car drop down onto the ground, the back of it. So both Toyotas out then. Michael Schumacher, they have slowed Massa down a little bit to give Schumacher some breathing space, and he's just 69.9 seconds behind now, so that he doesn't have to back off for those blue flags.
That then the 11th retirement of the season for the Toyota team, and their second double retirement So they go away and think about things for next year as well. So much to look forward to next year. Kimi Raikkonen moving across to Ferrari and Alonso moving across to McLaren. Well, another car that's out is David Coulthard. Let's find out why from Louise.
David, why have you had to park it?
We've experienced a gearbox problem again. Initially I thought it was the clutch because it started to slip coming out of turn 3. But I was able to get a gear and get the car back to the pits.
You say again?
Yeah, because it was disengaged, the gear. I think it's broken 4th gear.
It's been a dismal weekend for you, really, hasn't it, one way and another?
Yeah, it's disappointing, but you know, we all know what the goal is. We all know what work we have to do. The decision was taken, as you know already, very early in the season to concentrate on next year's car, and we're obviously hopeful that's going to be with a positive outcome. That said, even starting in a lowly position, racing is what it's all about, and I was having some fun with the guys I was battling with, and Takuma is not the easiest guy to race with, I can assure you. He's quite unpredictable, but in the end, I had a very fair battle with him into turn 1, so I thank him for once we've been on the same piece of track and we haven't touched.
Pleased to hear that. Thanks, David.
David Coulthard spent more time, I think, in recent races talking to Louise than he has racing other cars. Takuma Sato, he was referring to, is running at the moment in 12th place, having a great run in front of Albers, Yamamoto, Dornbos, Montero and Michael Schumacher. So Super Aguri finishing the season on a real high. Sato lapping in the mid-115s, just a couple of seconds slower than the pace at the front. What a fantastic credit to everyone at Super Aguri, which wasn't even a team 12 months ago. We're riding on board with Nick Heidfeld, chasing after Pedro de la Rosa. The fastest lap of the race, though, has just been set by Felipe Massa, a 1:13.2. But I tell you what, the Hondas are faster at the moment than the Renaults. Barrichello and Button are quicker than Alonso and Fisichella, and they're closing the gap down to them now in this battle for the final podium places. Renault obviously have got the engines turned down a little bit. They're being a little bit conservative here, and I sense that Honda, Barrichello and Button sense an opportunity.
I think they're going hell for leather, the two Hondas, to try to beat each other. Barrichello 5th, Button 6th. Surely at the moment Renault 3rd and 4th have turned the wick down a bit on the engine. They just need to get Alonso home, and Fisichella there as the rear gunner, and they're getting ready for Barrichello to pit, so they're probably running a little bit lighter too. But Honda then pushing extremely hard, 5th and 6th at the moment. Kubica, De La Rosa and Heidfeld having a decent scrap behind them. Scott Speed is in the top 10 for Toro Rosso. Also Renault and McLaren getting ready for a pit stop too.
It's one of those sort of days when there might be a point for the likes of Scott Speed with a few retirements. We've already had quite a few of them. I mean, a long way, even off half distance, as Raikkonen comes into the pits, as does Fisichella and Barrichello. So 3 of the top 6 into the pits on lap 22. This is Barrichello's car. That's Fisichella's car. They came in with Raikkonen in the lead of that troop. Fisichella ahead of Barrichello. It looks like they're leaving that way. Wow, that was close. Just they're leaving that way. But Barrichello almost jumped Fisichella at the pit stops.
Well, they were 3 or 4 seconds behind, so surely then they put more fuel in. It goes in about 13 litres per second in the pit lane, and it's very much a tactical gamble as to how long you're going to leave that fuel hose on, as then De La Rosa, Kubica and Heidfeld have gone ahead of them. Of course, they've yet to stop. Massa, 22, his lead over Alonso. Neither of them have stopped. Is 13 seconds at the moment. Button on his outlap from his stop. No, sorry, he hasn't stopped. It was Barrichello. But Button is flying at the moment. He knows this is his chance to leapfrog Barrichello.
Well, Fisichella and Barrichello had identical laps coming into the pits. There was 1.5 seconds between them. So you'd have to say that must mean Renault have put more fuel in the car, as you say, and that's why they were so close on the way out. They very nearly got jumped by Rubens Barrichello, but they got away with it. And that's the important thing. Jenson Button then up into 3rd place, and now he is moving pretty quickly. 1:13.3 is not far off the fastest pace we've seen from anyone in the race. It's in fact, it's the fastest lap so far of Massa, is just a whisker under 1:13.3, and that's the pace Jenson's on. So for the first time really this season, Button has a car which is quick enough to win the Grand Prix. He has won a race this year, as we take another look at that, but that was due to some certain circumstances and weather and changing conditions. Take nothing away from his victory, he earned it, but He's got a quick car today, Martin.
Well, Honda might get a bit of a slapping for releasing Barrichello there, but Ted's got further news for us.
And it's not long before Jensen pits, so he needs to get on with it. But just down at Ferrari, Bridgestone have had a good look at that tyre, Martin, Michael's tyre, and they think that it was cut by a piece of debris. They say that after the safety car, the pressures go down and the sidewalls are especially susceptible to debris, and we saw how much there was on the track all over it. So they think it was hit and punctured by something on the straight.
Yeah, I have to say that's my feeling too. It was just a little glancing blow if it was Fisichella's front wing. But meanwhile, Massa's just won a 1:12.8 for Ferrari. That's just miles quicker than anything else. And well, he's been the class of the field all weekend, hasn't he?
He's been very, very impressive. I mean, he was extremely erratic at the start of the season. It's a bit of smoke there from somebody, a bit of a lock-up, I think, from Michael Schumacher as he tries to get away from his teammate to avoid being lapped. But Massa's performance in this race so far, we're 24 laps into the Grand Prix. He's yet to make a stop. His lap times have been so close together, so consistent. It's almost like looking at a different racing driver. And clearly he's sending a signal out here to his teammate for next year, Kimi Raikkonen, that he should no way assume he's going to be the #1 driver next year. Massa staking a claim here. In comes the race leader then for his first stop this afternoon on lap 24 of 71.
He's got a 14-second advantage over Fernando Alonso. Alonso is 5 seconds clear of Button, who surely has done enough to leapfrog Barrichello. Also, Button's got the advantage that they'll be able to fuel him slightly shorter to make sure he gets track position. Looks like a pretty perfect stop there for Massa and Ferrari, and he is back on track. Alonso takes the lead of the Grand Prix.
The other car that I think Button might fancy he can pass here through the pit stops is going to be Fisichella, because he was only a couple of seconds behind him and he's gone a few laps longer in this stint. His lap times now, Button, are 13.1 for the second lap in succession. Button is flying here in third place. The Honda team are ready for him, and we'll have to watch this one because Fisichella is down in 8th place, not lapping particularly quickly at the moment. He is vulnerable then to Button, who could leapfrog quite nicely up here through the first round of pit stops. That's the top 8 as it stands at the moment. You can see some of them have stopped and some of them haven't. Alonso takes the lead then of this Grand Prix. And well, he's giving that apex a bit of a wide berth, isn't he? I wonder if that's where the track is continuing to break up.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. It looked like he pretty much saved the tarmac on the apex there, that's for sure. Whether it's a mistake or, as you say, the first signs of problem there. Michael Schumacher's down in the low 113s as well, but suddenly with Massa's imminent pit stop, he was able to get back on it again. And Alonso continues. He leads the race. It's moving into lap 26, and Button pits then. This is crucial. He's staring at a podium this afternoon, Button is.
Absolutely, definitely staring at a podium. He might even finish second here this afternoon. I think Massa's too quick for him, and he lost too much time early on, but Jensen can definitely finish this race in second place, particularly if Alonso is conservative in the closing stages. Jensen is a driven man here. Out of the pit lane we go, and has he overtaken Fisichella and Barrichello?
It's a very long pit exit here. You don't know really until you filter out. You go all the way around the inside of the first 2 or 3 corners, and we can't see, unfortunately, from here.
And the director doesn't know what he's looking at. I'm so sorry about this, but we think Button is in front of Fisichella and Barrichello. There is Jensen Button, and further behind him was Giancarlo Fisichella. Yes, indeed he has. Button has leapfrogged 2 drivers. Fantastic. So when it shakes out, he should be in third place.
And I tell you what, he's not far behind Raikkonen either, is he? I think that's Raikkonen in the distance there, but yep, perfectly working out there for Button. Some great laps he put in, and of course we know that his qualifying position was not representative of his ultimate speed as the race leader, and surely the champion-elect Fernando Alonso pits.
Tyres off then. I know a lot of friends of Alonso's chief mechanic watching this race in the pub in Hemel Hempstead, all wearing team shirts, very loyal fans there enjoying this one. And Alonso looking down the barrel of being a 2-time Formula 1 world champion. If he did it, he'd be the youngest ever back-to-back Formula 1 world champion. Yet another record for him to take away from Michael Schumacher. Alonso rejoins then. Where does he rejoin? Behind Raikkonen. And that is Jensen Button in the background. So Button has got... Alonso's managed to keep the pace up, actually, quite well by staying out a long time. Fisichella was the one who lost out there.
So was 14 seconds ahead of Kubica in the BMW, but Kubica has not yet pitted. So we'll see where it all shakes out shortly. Now that the most of the key, in fact, all of the key players have now pitted.
Well, as you say, still a few to pit. Kubica, De La Rosa, Heidfeld. When it shakes out, I would expect Massa to be leading this one, with Raikkonen, Alonso second, or Raikkonen second possibly, depending on how well it goes out, and then Raikkonen and Button. So Button would be fourth. That's not a bad effort considering he started 14th on the grid. It's still a long way to go in this race, 44 laps. It will be about attrition, and it will be about a trade-off. How conservative can Renault afford to be? I think they're quite happy for Massa to win this race, with Michael Schumacher 50 seconds behind the race leader. In comes Kubica.
It's looking good for BMW to overtake Toyota in the Constructors' Championship. We're one behind, and both Toyotas are out of the race now, so they could well move themselves up to fourth in the World Championship, which you'd have to say is a pretty solid performance from them in their transition year with Sauber. Massa's leading then on lap 28. De La Rosa and Heidfeld are second and third. They've yet to pit. And Alonso is ahead of Raikkonen now. Alonso did, in fact, get himself ahead of Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, that was important. There is Raikkonen, then from second down to third. So Alonso, far from being conservative at this stage, is pushing hard. It's the only way he knows, really. And he's managed to get himself into the front of the McLaren. So Massa is the leader. At the moment, De La Rosa yet to stop. And Heidfeld also, but when it shakes out and they do make their stops, we will have Alonso in second place, Raikkonen third and Button fourth. One of the BMWs dives into the pits then. Must be Heidfeld, because we've just had Kubica into the pits. Both of those drivers then confirmed this weekend by BMW in race seats for next year, with the very promising newcomer Sebastian Vettel, the test driver. There looked like a pass there into turn one. Let's see who it was, but it looked like someone
I think it was Button on Raikkonen. I think the pass could just have been Button nailing Kimi Raikkonen in there. Alonso's managed to leapfrog Raikkonen, as we've now seen, and hopefully we'll get a shot of that. We're looking at the wrong thing, not for the first time today. And there's De La Rosa, followed by Alonso, followed by Jenson Button. He has passed Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, just out of the corner of her eye, you can see it into turn one. Jenson Button on the move then here. Past Raikkonen, who's now lost places to Alonso and Button. There's De La Rosa, his teammate. Will he be sitting in a race seat next year at McLaren, or will Lewis Hamilton, the winner of the GP2 championship this year, will he be sitting there? Here's a look at the Button move.
Yeah, from a long way back, Jenson getting a bit nervy on the brake pedal there, but kept the apex beautifully, and surely must have surprised Raikkonen with that one. He came from so far back. Brilliant driving from both of them, you have to say, but Button absolutely on a charge.
And he's closing up on the back of Fernando Alonso now as well. So an inspired Jenson Button here at Interlagos senses he might even get a second place out of this one. Already a winner this season. Victory at the Hungarian Grand Prix back in August. Broke his duck finally. And, well, ever since then, Button has been the highest point scorer of anybody in Formula One. He's got 29 points since the Hungarian Grand Prix. A tremendously strong way to finish the championship. He must be kicking himself as well, because yesterday with that problem with traction control putting him down on the grid, if he'd been able to qualify where he should have qualified, around about third on the grid, who knows what he might have achieved this afternoon.
It's a good race developing here from Alonso, who's in a net second place, down to Barrichello net sixth. There's only 6 seconds between the lot of them, and they've all got good cars. And we're seeing contact, quite a lot of contact there for Kubica in the BMW. Lapping, I would know. That's Scott Speed. Speed hasn't pitted yet. Kubica has just, so he'll need a new front wing on that one, and that'll cost him dearly. We were just saying how BMW could punish Toyota today. You don't need clumsy moves like that.
Now, it's difficult to see whose fault that one was, but Kubica, importantly, was in front of his teammate Heidfeld at that point. He used 3 cars in front of him and pushing hard, so Kubica having a strong end to the championship. Came in, of course, replacing Jacques Villeneuve midway through the season. A young Polish driver I think we'll be hearing a lot more about over the next few years. Massa leads. De La Rosa, who has yet to make his stop in the McLaren, is in second place. Alonso is 18 seconds behind Felipe Massa. Jenson Button is fourth. 5th is... We're approaching half distance in the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2006, the final race in the career of Michael Schumacher, his 250th Grand Prix meeting. And at the moment, he's in a bit of trouble. He's down in 11th place, 45 seconds behind the race leader, which is his teammate, Felipe Massa, who's led this race from pole position and has driven absolutely beautifully. We're taking a look at an onboard. That's a lock-up from Pedro de la Rosa, who's in the McLaren. He's running in 2nd place at the moment, and he must be doing a one-stop strategy here this afternoon. Almost everybody else is stopping twice and has stopped already, but De La Rosa yet to stop, and we're approaching half distance. So we'll see how that works out for him. Alonso's behind him, and Button as well, and Raikkonen, and they're all starting to be held up by Pedro de la Rosa as Scott Speed pits from 10th place. It's been an eventful race. Not to mention the incident involving Michael Schumacher getting a puncture on some debris. The debris was caused by a big accident involving Nico Rosberg. It's put both Williams out of this Grand Prix. We've lost both of the Toyotas as well, and David Coulthard, so 5 cars out.
These lap times are good, Rubens. You are still, again, the quickest car on the circuit, except for Massa.
Yeah, they're quite slow at the moment, though. Those they've dropped back into the late 114s. They've sort of got hooked up behind De La Rosa on his one stopper. He was out of position on the grid, the Spaniard in the McLaren, because he locked his wheel down into this first corner on a critical lap, and that is Fisichella making an error down into turn 1 that gives Rubens Barrichello, the man we were just hearing being given the pep talk there, saying you're fast, you're the 2nd fastest man on the track. Don't quite understand why the times are so slow at the moment, except for the Ferraris. Michael Schumacher is now up to 10th place, and I think they've all just settled in to a bit of a metronomic pace behind De La Rosa, who's not lapping fast enough. Schumacher steaming back through the pack. He is out of sequence with those pit stops. After, 20 cars went through that debris of Rosberg's shunt, and only Michael Schumacher picked up a puncture from it, but he's trying to repair that damage.
Well, luck has been a big feature of Schumacher's career, but the luck has definitely turned against him in the last couple of races. An engine failure in Japan meant he was 10 points behind Alonso going into this Grand Prix, and a puncture here in the early stages. There is no question in my mind that Schumacher had the speed to win this Grand Prix, even though he started 10th on the grid after problems in qualifying. Here comes Barrichello having a look up the inside of
Jensen.
There was a Button on Alonso, I beg your pardon. So we've got Honda's attacking Renaults, Button for an Alonso for 2nd, and Barrichello attacking Fisichella for 6th as De La Rosa finally pits.
I suspect Alonso might have been slightly wrong-footed as De La Rosa swept across into the pit lane, and that gave Button a run on him. So Jensen fancies he's dropped. That's Barrichello. You can tell Barrichello always with the orange band on the camera above the airbox. So it's Barrichello there behind Fisichella, but Button was just a mere 0.2 of a second behind Alonso as he crossed the line.
And of course Raikkonen is there in close attendance as well in 4th place. So 2nd, 3rd and 4th places are separated by just 1 second on the racetrack. Alonso, Button and Raikkonen. What a tremendous battle developing for those guys. Here's Michael Schumacher attacking Nick Heidfeld. Schumacher stopped just the once early on for a new set of tyres after his puncture. They obviously fueled him at that time because he's going deep into the race, completely out of sequence with everybody else. And, well, you can say what you like about Michael Schumacher, but he has never, ever given up until it's too late to do anything about it. And here is yet another classic example of that. In his final Grand Prix, Schumacher is going out fighting.
Yeah, he's got a great run up the hill. The BMW's been fast in a straight line, but not as fast as the Ferrari. He's in the perfect position now to pick up the slipstream. He'll pull it to the left-hand side. Heidfeld's not fighting him hard. Schumacher will take that P9 comfortably. Well, he really didn't care. We saw Dornbos just letting Michael through almost as if he was being lapped on 2-3 laps back, and Heidfeld really not putting up much of a fight either. Michael Schumacher then, actually after De La Rosa's stop, he's now up into P8 in the Ferrari. He is 44 seconds off the lead, but he'll be running quite a bit lighter at the moment. Now they've got rid of De La Rosa, can this leading pack of Alonso, Button, Raikkonen, Fisichella and Barrichello pick up their pace again? There's the BMW, must be Kubica they're expecting, with a new front wing ready.
Yeah, Massa is comfortably in the lead of this race, 24 seconds up the road, and I think the moment is looking very, very good for a Brazilian home victory that will send this crowd into orbit, I would imagine. They've packed out this place. They're loving it. Alonso, though, second, heading a train which involves Button and Raikkonen at the moment. Fisichella still under intense pressure from Rubens Barrichello in the battle over 5th and 6th places. Kubica, 7th. Michael Schumacher not far behind him and fighting his way back through the field. Now just setting the fastest lap of the race. Michael Schumacher, a 1:12.832. I tell you, what really makes Schumacher stand out throughout his career has been his ambition. His hunger to win over 16 years is absolutely unparalleled in the history of Formula One. This is, let's not forget it, ambition is such an important part of Schumacher's makeup. Let's not forget this is the son of a bricklayer from an anonymous part of northern Germany who rose to the very, very top of the world's richest sport. And here today, he's showing us once again his quality, fighting his way through. He's on yet another new fastest lap of the race so far. That's the top 8, and Ted Kravitz has news for us.
Yeah, Honda's engineers have been encouraging Jenson Button, James, on the radio. They've been saying that he can use more revs if he wants, if he thinks he can make it past Alonso, but he has to be careful with that engine with homologation just round the corner, remember. But they talked about this in the briefings, did Honda. They say that they can take advantage of Alonso's conservatism here this afternoon.
Thanks for that, Ted. Just to explain the homologation thing, at the end of this race, Honda are hoping to hand over 2 engines to the governing body, the FIA, that shall then be sealed, and that will form the basis of the engine they'll use for the next 4 years in Formula One. All the other teams have had to do the same thing, but Honda are leaving it to the last to hand over their engines, and they need both engines to finish on that basis. So although Button is inspired, he has to be a little bit careful and make sure he doesn't blow his engine up. New nose cone then was for Nick Heidfeld. So teammate Kubica had some damage, but has not replaced his, I think. And Heidfeld having to come in for a new nose.
Well, remember, behind the safety car, they were talking to Heidfeld about the nose of his car, had he damaged it in the first few laps. There's Button chasing Alonso down for all he's worth. Looking at it now, Michael Schumacher is absolutely flying. He is stunningly fast. What can Ferrari do now? Surely we've got Massa 24 seconds ahead. They've got to slow Massa down and back the pack into Michael Schumacher, because right now the World Championship, both World Championship drivers and constructors, is moving away from them. Will they choose to play that tactic, the joker card if you like, of just backing Massa into the pack and see if they can bring Michael Schumacher into play? We won't know just how close Michael is until he pits next time. Just to remind you, he is out of sequence, having to be refueled about lap 11 when he got a puncture.
Yeah, I think certainly De La Rosa managed to back them up a little bit for a few laps before his own first stop here this afternoon. Lots of names and autographs scribbled on Jenson Button's helmet there. So look at Schumacher passing Kubica. That's for 7th place here, so passing easily both BMWs.
It's almost like there's a lot of respect going on out there for the great man. Nobody's putting up much of a fight, are they? They sort of, okay, after you, sir, with Michael Schumacher, and he then is up to 7th place.
Oh, but slowing, hang on. What's this? He's offline again. Has Schumacher got more problems, or was that just a mistake? He's feeling the car with the steering. Is everything okay, or has he got some more problems?
I think he was just cleaning up the tyres. I believe he just ran wide in Pinerino corner. There's about a 70-mile-an-hour corner. Did he just, obviously lost that place again. Will Kubica try harder to keep him behind this time? John Todt looking, the sporting director of Ferrari, looking extremely nervous, but Michael carries on at unabated speed. I believe it was a driving error.
Well, Schumacher has won 72 Grand Prix for the Ferrari team, all of them managed by Jean Todt, who went to the team back in the early 1990s, brought Schumacher over in 1996, famously, from the Benetton team as a double world champion, a move similar to the one really that Alonso's making, leaving the Renault team to go to McLaren as possibly a double world champion at the end of this Grand Prix. And well, Todt and Schumacher have won so much together over the years. So much a part of Schumacher's success is the disciplined environment which has been created by Jean Todt and the technical director Ross Brawn. There is Ross Brawn.
Yeah, you have to respect Michael for that. He could have taken the easy option, couldn't he, of going to Williams or McLaren, who were dominant at the time, and he chose to go to Ferrari, who were having dismal performances, and then try and rebuild that team, which of course he did very successfully, albeit taking a few key people with him from his initial team at Benetton.
Absolutely right, Martin. I think a lot of drivers like Senna and Prost, they for sure would have gone to Williams, the top team at the time. Here we go then, a pass once again on Kubica, who again doesn't make it too difficult for Michael Schumacher. A lot of vibration, gives you an indication of just how bumpy this racetrack is at Interlagos. 2.67 miles of teeth-shredding, filling-dropping bumps. And well, that's certainly one of the 2 or 3 most physical racetracks on the calendar.
I tell you, I was watching that from behind a pillow. That is not the right place to overtake, and good job Kubica was just letting him through. Michael, supremely brave there. There's not a lot of skill involved at the top there. It's all just danger and fear because it's so fast. The cars are glued to the ground, but Michael coming along the inside of Kubica. Incredible bravery on that particular move. Now his next target is Rubens Barrichello. A dozen seconds up the road in the Honda. Barrichello's charging after that leading pack, and here we go again. Kubica for the second time this afternoon, really making it easy for Michael Schumacher to go on his way. But Schumacher is going to haul himself back into contention.
So he clearly doesn't lack for bottle, and he clearly doesn't lack for speed. Does he lack for motivation? Why is he stopping?
Well, he says he just can't face having to build up and do all that training and work again over the winter to fend off Alonso and Raikkonen. I still believe if he stayed at Ferrari, with the advantage they're going to have with Bridgestones next year, and knowing where all the green buttons are at Ferrari, he could have given Raikkonen a serious run for his money. But anyway, he's chosen to call it a day. His decision, he knows what he wants to do.
Absolutely. His wife Corinna, who's here this weekend. His father Rolf, who he's brought out from Germany with his new wife. Of course, Michael's mother died a few years ago, just before the Imola Grand Prix, as I'm sure many of you will remember. They're all here, some of his oldest friends from Kirpen in Germany as well, for this very special weekend, his final Grand Prix. And he's going to retreat into his family, into a private world. And I'm sure we'll see Schumacher again, but I very much doubt we'll see him in any principal role within Formula One. So Felipe Massa is leading by 25 seconds here, trying to become the first Brazilian to win on home soil for 13 years. Alonso is second. That's all he needs to become the world champion of 2006. Button's third. Fourth is Raikkonen. We're 26 laps away from the end of the 2006 Formula One World Championship. It's been a long road, 18 Grand Prix. Felipe Massa there leading this final race for Ferrari. His teammate Michael Schumacher has been the fastest man in the race, as you can see from that graphic. He's currently in 7th place, lost a lot of time with a puncture early on in this Grand Prix. Otherwise, I'm sure that Schumacher could and would have won this Grand Prix, and the championship position might well have been slightly different, although at the moment Alonso is doing all he needs to do to win the World Championship. He is in 2nd place, and well, Schumacher started the season strongly with a pole position in Bahrain, narrowly losing out that first race to Alonso. Then he lost ground over the early part of the season with problems in Malaysia and Australia, and that allowed Alonso to get either first or second in every race in the early rounds to build a 25-point championship lead as Barrichello pits from 6th place. Second half of the season has all been about Schumacher and Ferrari closing the gap. The pendulum has swung between the two of them, and going into the final penultimate race in Japan, they were level on points, but then an engine failure for Michael Schumacher swung the pendulum back towards Alonso, and he is now doing all he needs to do to become the 2006 world champion. He's touring around in 2nd place, ahead of Jenson Button 3rd, 4th place Raikkonen, and 5th place Fisichella. And he's 24 laps away from becoming the world champion for the 2nd year in a row. Yeah,
I think they could get a rude awakening before the end of this Grand Prix from Michael Schumacher. He's certainly got a chance of a good haul of points, and even a look at the podium. His pace is enormous. He's out of sequence on the pit stops. He's only 11 seconds behind Alonso. They've all got to stop one more time before the end of the Grand Prix. Ferrari are now ready for Michael Schumacher, and I think I saw him diving in the pits at the back of the circuit. Yes, he has.
What's going to be critical here is to get out in front of De La Rosa, who does not need to stop again in the McLaren. Schumacher has to do that. It's going to be difficult to get past him otherwise. Ted.
It's marked absolutely perfectly. A new set of Bridgestone tyres on for Michael. Is this his last pit stop in a Formula One race? And it's absolutely perfect. Poetry in motion by Ferrari for Michael Schumacher.
Well, it's his last pit stop unless anything untoward happens. 7.7 seconds worth of fuel is enough to take him to the checkered flag. That is Schumacher's final pit stop, something he's been so good at over the years. The in-lap to come into the pits, the out-lap on new tyres out of the pits. He and the Ferrari team have become so well drilled. It's a big part of their success stories. I think you were saying during the week, can you think of great overtaking manoeuvres of Michael Schumacher? And really a lot of his overtaking has come from being so sharp in the pit stops, hasn't it?
Yeah, and he started at the front of the grid so often, but he did clear De La Rosa's McLaren there, so he's now free to get back on that charge that he's been on ever since the puncture, and surely Michael Schumacher can haul himself up to that. It's going to give Button and co a hurry up, because Alonso will be on a little more than tick over. Remember, Alonso only needs a top 8 to take the World Championship, and he's currently second and get 8 points from where he's sitting at the moment. But he's not too bothered, I would imagine. It's Button and co that could get a rude awakening depending on the final pace of this Ferrari. But Schumacher on a brilliant charge.
He certainly is. He's going to, I think Button and the rest are going to have to make their stops relatively soon, probably around about lap 50 or 51. They've got 2 or 3 laps to go. They can't afford to give anything away to Schumacher. He is just 30 seconds behind them, and it takes just over round 20 to make a pit stop here, so they can't afford to give anything away to him.
He could even finish second yet, Michael Schumacher. He's only 1.3 behind Barrichello, and Barrichello has made his second and final stop, so Michael will be straight on top of him.
Michael behind you, and you are racing him.
Jock clear there, race engineer to Rubens Barrichello, telling him that his former teammate of many years at Ferrari, Michael Schumacher, is right behind him. Renault are ready for one of their drivers to come in. First time round, it was Fisichella who pitted first.
You don't want to hear that, do you? You don't want to hear that Michael's behind you and it is for position. We think Fisichella does pit for Ferrari. He's had an ordinary week afternoon, it has to be said. He's not really had the pace of teammate Alonso, not for the first time, but he's in there somewhere, and he's got a job to do as well this afternoon for the second time of fending off Michael Schumacher. Schumacher is absolutely flying. He's done a 12.3, a new fastest lap of the race.
But importantly, he's going to be behind Fisichella, who's pitted there, and Schumacher is going to still be behind Fisichella, so he will not leapfrog him. He's going to have to pass him on the racetrack. One of a number of cars he's going to have to pass on the racetrack. And despite having put fuel in the car, Schumacher just sets a new fastest lap of the race. What an unbelievable performance from Michael Schumacher. That's so hard to do. That car's just taken on fuel to the finish. Got 21 laps worth of fuel in the car, and he's doing low 1-minute 12s. That's unheard of.
Yeah, well, the track's obviously rubbering up nicely. The car is working beautifully, as we've seen. It's the class act around here, the Ferrari on those Bridgestone tyres. And Barrichello is going to be under some kind of pressure on the top straight as he heads into turn 1. Michael very late on the brakes, and Button has pitted from 4th place. Well, it was 3rd. Raikkonen's gone through to take 3rd, and here he is. This needs to be a good one, Jensen. You can take 2nd place there. You need to get clear of Fernando Alonso, otherwise you can have your mirrors full of Michael Schumacher.
Unfortunately for him, both Raikkonen and Alonso are running longer in this middle stint. We saw that allowed people to leapfrog others, so Button a little bit vulnerable here. He needs a good outlap, and he needs to hope that Alonso and Raikkonen have some problems.
There's Button ahead of Fisichella then. Fisichella stopped 2, and Michael's through. Look, Michael's through at the back of your picture. He's passed Barrichello down into turn 1, as we expected. Sadly, the director here was not expecting that. And Schumacher then, next target is Fisichella.
He's a numpty, I think that's what you meant to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Massa leading, Alonso second, yet to make his second stops. Here's another look at it from overhead. Down the inside, Barrichello, another one of the drivers, not making it too difficult today for Michael Schumacher.
Michael's got such a slingshot there in this slipstream. Kimi Raikkonen pits from 3rd place as we watch Michael Schumacher peerlessly on his way. Raikkonen, that's not a brand new set of tyres. Hasn't done too much work, but 7.1 for Raikkonen. It was 7.3 for Jensen, apparently. It's all getting very close at the front, and it's about to be concertinaed with Michael Schumacher.
Button goes through the first corner, so I think he should be safe. Yeah. Barrichello and Michael Schumacher go through, so I think Button is safe. Raikkonen has not passed Jensen Button in the pit stops. There you go, there's Button and there's Raikkonen. So even though he stayed out a little bit longer, it didn't work for McLaren and Kimi Raikkonen. And here is Ferrari. This has got to be for the race leader, Felipe Massa, 19 laps away from a moment of history, really, to try and win Schumacher's last Grand Prix and become the first Brazilian for many years to win his home race. Beautiful stop by Ferrari. Beautifully driven all day by Felipe Massa, and he's on his way.
I wouldn't want to be the guy that has to stick his hand down in the side pods to clear the rubbish out. That's got to feel terrible, seeing the engine revving, the car and driver eager to get away, and you're parked in front of it with your arm stuck inside the radiators. Massa comes back out into quite a lot of traffic. They will all get heavy blue flags. And what did we see at the back there? Surely Alonso's further behind than that, isn't he?
No, because he's not stopped yet. Yeah, so he will have to make a stop. So although it looks as though Alonso is quite close to Massa, in fact, he's a pit stop behind him. That is the superiority today of the 25-year-old Brazilian who grew up within a stone's throw of this racetrack, Felipe Massa. Certainly when Jean Todt, the boss of Ferrari, hired him from the Sauber team, a lot of people were shaking their heads and wondering, because Massa was nothing if not erratic in his early career, but how he has matured, driving alongside Michael Schumacher at Ferrari, and with Ross Brawn and others teaching him and tutoring him, he's become a fast, consistent racing driver who, I have to say, I've been massively impressed with this season.
Well, he was a bit of a liability even at the beginning of the year. If you remember, in Bahrain, he just dropped the car under braking, and it looked like Felipe Massa of old, but he's just matured and changed and calmed down his style, and, well, I have to say, he's been more than a match for Michael Schumacher on several occasions.
Well,
Alonso getting himself down in the low 113s. He's obviously got a bit of time in his pocket if he needs it. So Alonso feeling the need to get on with it a little bit.
Yeah, that's because he's got to get out in front of Jensen Button. I think he'll do that pretty comfortably, actually. 24 seconds, the margin he has over Button. That should be more than enough to make his final stop of the afternoon. And then it'll be the run to the flag for Alonso to clinch a world championship. But well, he's still got to make it. There's nothing straightforward about this racetrack, because we've seen that already this afternoon, some of the things that have happened to some of the drivers.
Schumacher just half a second behind Fisichella now, so it's going to happen on this next lap. We're watching Massa, the leader by 3.7 seconds over Alonso, who has not yet stopped. And you can see Alonso in the back of that picture there. But, Button still third. Now then, Alonso, the last key runner to stop in this season.
Yeah, it's once again been good race tactics by Pat Simmons and Rod Nelson, who engineer Fernando Alonso, and the tactics have been absolutely spot on. They've run longer in the first and second stints than anybody else. It's been more than enough. Alonso's done the job he had to do. He's been running second here. He should rejoin in second ahead of Jensen Button.
Key stop there for Alonso. They ran over those earthing strips to make sure there's no sparks created from the carbon fibre chassis. He's got a Toro Rosso, I think it is, pulling out ahead of him. Where is he going to feed in? Is it ahead of Button or behind him? Schumacher remains behind Fisichella. Has in fact lost a little bit of time there. There is Alonso, and there is Button in the background. So Alonso comfortably then back into second place.
But most encouragingly, I think, from Honda and Jensen Button's point of view, is that they were on Renault's pace here today. And if Jensen hadn't started in 14th place on the grid, I think he would have been in front of Alonso here this afternoon, because he's driven absolutely magnificently, and this car is driving really well. Top 8 then: Massa, Alonso, Button, Raikkonen 4th, 5th is Fisichella, 6th Michael Schumacher, 7th Barrichello, and 8th Pedro de la Rosa.
F1 on ITV, sponsored by Shell V-Power.
go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just like we used to do.
5 laps completed by the Brazilian, still going very quick indeed right at the top here, and we've actually got another BMW in trouble. It's Nick Heidfeld sliding across the tarmac at the moment, and there's a big problem with that BMW Sauber, which could be fatal for Nick Heidfeld's chances in this race.
Yes, indeed, he's been having trouble. Actually, he's down there dicing with a Red Bull and a Toro Rosso, which is not what he'd want at all. And he's been lapped by Felipe Massa. After Massa came out from his pit stop, he came across the three of them, and he soon made short work of them. They did move out of the way, but you could see that Heidfeld really struggling, so not at all happy with the car. And the other BMW, Kubica, is out of the points still in 9th place.
Yeah, being kept at bay very easily indeed by Pedro de la Rosa here. Rubens Barrichello runs in 7th. Michael Schumacher running in 6th, and on the last lap he was just 0.7 of a second behind Giancarlo Fisichella, even after losing time when he was being held up by Sakon Yamamoto. At the top, 1:12.9 was Felipe Massa's last time, and he's still significantly quicker. But here comes Michael Schumacher and Giancarlo Fisichella. I can see them coming to the top of the hill now. Now, there's plenty of cars going down this straight, but the crowd will be focusing on one red one and one blue one. Can Schumacher get into the first turn? No, he can't. There just wasn't enough of a toe for him to make up the difference, but he'll be right there when they come round again for the next lap, and Fisichella's been let off, albeit temporarily, I think.
Yeah, I don't think like the advantage Michael had over the Saubers that we saw him overtaking, and with Rubens as well on the straight with Fisichella this time. So he's going to have to rethink it. Now he's on the same strategy as everyone else on the same fuel loads. He's going to have to rethink this one and think how he's going to get past Fisichella safely, because he's seen before that he doesn't really want to risk overtaking him, like do a do-or-die manoeuvre, because he is going to die if he does that.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is a measure of the performance from Michael Schumacher, the ground he's made up. The two of them here back again scrapping, and it was this dice for 5th place as it was early on in the race at this first corner just below us here. Schumacher then had to crawl around the 2.68 miles very slowly, and he's pulled all that back, including the pit stop.
Makes you wonder what would have happened, of course, if he hadn't have had that puncture.
You're riding on board with one of the greats, if not the greatest racing driver in the history of Formula One. Michael Schumacher is 14 laps away from seeing the checkered flag for the very last time. He went into this Grand Prix with a chance of winning the World Championship. That pretty much went away from him when he got a puncture in the early stages, but also he needed Alonso not to finish in the points this afternoon. And so far, with 14 laps to go, Alonso is there in 2nd place, having driven a very conservative but very steady race. Out front is Felipe Massa, the 25-year-old from here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, bidding to become the first Brazilian to win his home race since the great Ayrton Senna back in 1993. He's driven fantastically as well. The Ferrari has been the class of the field here this afternoon. But Britain's Jenson Button, but Schumacher offline there, and Jenson Button is in line for a podium here this afternoon in 3rd place. He too has driven fantastically well. You can see how hard Schumacher is pushing though. He goes offline. That's the 2nd time that's happened.
Yeah, since he's come up against the back of Fisichella, he's hit traffic, made mistakes. Fisichella's really been his problem, hasn't he, this afternoon? But that's putting Michael back quite a lot now, and beginning to struggle. His pace, his rate of closing on a clear podium chance has suddenly been halted.
Well, he is only 7 seconds away from the podium position of Jenson Button at the moment, and considering how much he's been through this afternoon with having to tour around most of the lap with a shredding tyre, then change it, being on a completely different strategy from everyone else, having to fight his way through traffic, although you'd have to say today that a lot of the other drivers have given him plenty of room and led him on his way when fighting for position. Nevertheless, take nothing away from him. Schumacher has driven absolutely brilliantly this afternoon. He's going out fighting here in Brazil. 13 laps to the flag.
Yeah, he deserves something a little bit better than 6th place at the moment, doesn't he? But let's see what he can do in these remaining dozen laps. As you say, he's about 7 seconds away from Alonso's 2nd position, but he's got a lot of fast cars and good drivers to pass if he's going to get there. Alonso, Button, Raikkonen and Fisichella. And this is that Pinheiro corner. He just goes in too deep, gets off the new tarmac. It's very dirty on the outside there with the little marbles, as we call them, little balls of rubber that flick off the top of the tyres as they wear. And that's twice now put Michael Schumacher onto a scruffy and slow lap.
Well, for a man who's been a serial collector of records and results, no pole position in his final Grand Prix. Doesn't look like a victory in his final Grand Prix either. The only thing he'll take away from this, apart from a few points, is the fastest lap. Because at the moment, that margin on a 1:12.3, Schumacher absolutely flying in the middle part of this Grand Prix to set that time. That is the top 8 at the moment. Schumacher half a second behind Giancarlo Fisichella in the battle for 5th. Then 5 more seconds up the road is Raikkonen, who's a second behind Jenson Button in a battle for 3rd place, the final podium position.
That'll be the 76th fastest lap of Michael Schumacher's career. Of course, today is his 248th start, although there's a bit of conjecture whether that could even be 250, but races that were restarted or that Michael never made it to the start line of. But we've got him officially here at 248 as the spiker goes too deep into turn 1, recovers across the grass. Robert Dornbos there pits for Red Bull. They're not going to score any points today. You're right, BMW, who looked so strong to score points and take that championship position of 4th in the constructors away from Toyota, look like they've thrown it away.
Well, I'm sure the drive of the day will come down to either Felipe Massa or Michael Schumacher, but a huge shout, I think, for Takuma Sato in the Super Aguri. He is in 10th place, just 2 positions away from a World Championship point. That team had not even been thought of, was just about thought of last year, but certainly not formed. And guess what? He's lapping just over a second and a half slower than the front runners in a Super Aguri. What an absolutely awesome achievement.
Yeah, Aguri Suzuki's offered us a go in that. I'm going to have a drive in that in Silverstone, which I'm very much looking forward to, which I thought was very kind of my old teammate from our Ligier days. And I think 1 or 2 other old boys like myself are going to have a run in, so it'll be interesting to see how that, we'll find out firsthand how it's going to go. Massa, lap 62, leads by 26 seconds over Alonso. Button 3rd, 1.4 behind Raikkonen. 4th, 1.8 behind Button. Fisichella, 4.5 seconds adrift of Raikkonen in 5th, but Schumacher is all over his gearbox. He'll be coming into the picture at the back. There it is. He's got a good run up the inside, surely. If he gets enough slipstream, he'll just throw it up there. Oh, that's a long way behind. Fisichella's going to cover that one off. Michael's just got a bit of a head block on Fisichella today. It's not working out for him with the young Italian. Not that young anymore.
And the back straight they go, down towards Lake Descent Corner. Interlagos means between the lakes. And there's a lake just on their right as they make this turn. Big, rather fetid looking thing, it has to be said. Not a great deal of fresh water in there. But this is certainly a dramatic racetrack in every sense. That 1 or 2 people have had problems getting in and out of here. There's been some gunmen coming out of the favelas and robbing sort of Toyota people at gunpoint. I know Jenson Button, one of a number of drivers who took to hiring a bulletproof car to get themselves in and out of the racetrack every day. It is certainly a spicy place. It's got a real edge to it. And this Grand Prix has matched the environment absolutely totally. Certainly as far as Michael Schumacher is concerned, this has been a final Grand Prix with a lot of edge to it.
Well, at one point after his stop, although they did put some fuel in and recover some of the damage done, Michael was 70 seconds behind Massa, the leader. They were first and last at that time. Now he's only 34 seconds behind, and again, beautifully in the slipstream of that Renault. Is he near enough this time? And again, Fisichella sweeps in, but he's locked a brake. He's gone very wide across the grass. Fizzy's blown it this time, and Michael takes the position. That was way too deep on the brakes. And Michael then moves up to 5th place. He can charge after Raikkonen now.
Well, of course, there is a small resonance of this with the Constructors' Championship at the moment. Ferrari looking like getting 10 points for Felipe Massa. And now, what would it be? 4 points for Michael Schumacher. It's 14 points. Alonso's on for 8. And Fisichella is on for 3. So at the moment, it's Renault still have it. But if Schumacher makes up many more places, it might start to swing away from them a bit.
I'm sure, as we said on the grid, Fisichella was told to have the widest Renault out there. Well, he certainly achieved that most of the afternoon. But then he finally outbraked himself down into turn 1, probably looking a bit too closely in his mirrors there at Michael Schumacher. Ted has further news.
Yeah, I just popped into the Renault garage, Martin. Absolutely packed in there. So many people, you wouldn't believe it. But they were all talking about straight line speed and how Michael had the advantage on them by straight line speed by about 3 or 4 miles an hour. But conversely, Jenson Button not near enough on straight line speed, faster than Alonso to have a go. But they're just keeping Alonso informed over the radio, keeping everything cool, and he's cool in the car too.
Thanks for that, Ted. Well, Michael Schumacher took a second out of Raikkonen, 4th place man Raikkonen that time, so he'll be up with him in the next couple of laps. And then, well, Button might just have enough cushion in the 8 remaining laps to maintain 3rd on the... In fact, it looks like Michael's heading for a squabble with 4th here now with Raikkonen. Button should be safe.
Well, if it stays like this and the positions don't change, then Renault would take the Constructors' Championship by 6 points, and Fernando Alonso would be the 2006 Drivers' World Champion. So both championships would go Renault's way. What a year we've had. What a year of reversals, what a year of controversy as well. Some of the penalties that have been handed out to Alonso and Michael Schumacher as well, it has to be said, have certainly caused some controversy. For me, the one in Monza was absolutely wrong on Alonso, but the rest of them seem to have been more or less right. And there's a bit of smoke there down at turn 1 as somebody locked up.
Somebody surely has locked up big time, and yellow flag, so somebody's gone off by the looks of it as well. And there then is Michael Schumacher with double yellows waving, meaning cars and people on the racetrack be prepared to stop. Nick Heidfeld, who was P11, drops out of the Grand Prix, and Schumacher then all over Raikkonen, and he's just he's been quite slow for a while, and that is a right rare suspension failure for the BMW of Heidfeld. He had contact on the first lap, and he's been concerned about his car ever since, as it turns out, rightly so.
Most of the incidents today involving the BMWs one way or another. There's the Drivers' Championship prediction. Alonso winning it quite comfortably in the end over Michael Schumacher, who's lost championships in the final round uncomfortably often, certainly to Mika Häkkinen in the late 1990s. He will recall with some pain, but here, has to be said, with 10 points behind going into this Grand Prix, there was never much of a chance. And even if Alonso retired from this Grand Prix at this stage, with Michael Schumacher down in 5th place, 2 cars between him and teammate Felipe Massa, it's highly unlikely that Schumacher will win the championship. Here comes Schumacher though, still yellow flags, can't overtake into turn 1 for the stricken BMW of Nick Heidfeld, and that is the main overtaking place around this racetrack, so very frustrating for Schumacher. He'll be hoping they clear that BMW out of the way as soon as possible, and then he can give a run up the inside of Raikkonen.
Well, it's not going to be an easy car to move with 2 wheels on it, and could well be there for a while. So if it could go wrong, it has gone wrong for Michael Schumacher today, really. His luck has deserted him, hasn't he, in these last 2 Grand Prix of his career. Lap 66 we're on, Alonso just pegging Massa at about 25 seconds deficit. Button now just 1.5 seconds behind Alonso. Schumacher, as you say, he's been robbed of his main overtaking spot now.
Well, it's clear. Yellow flag is clear, so now we might see something this time round. So, oh, goodness me, round the outside on the run down towards Mergullo was Michael Schumacher, and I'm sure he'll get the message now. He can have a go into turn 1. He doesn't have to do it in a place where it's more or less impossible. He can try the possible again now.
Yeah, that's obviously Raikkonen slow into that Bica de Pato corner, they call it. Michael put himself on the outside, a little bit crazy actually. It's never going to work around there. And then he got onto the dirty part of the racetrack and lost quite a lot of time. That may well have cost him 4th place.
He's enjoying himself. One thing you can say about Michael Schumacher is he loves racing. Right from the get-go, when he first stepped into a go-kart as a small kid in Germany, he's always loved his racing. And even throughout his Formula 1 career, a totally cynical environment in many ways. A lot of people have strong views about some of the things he's done, some of the unsporting things he's done. And there's no doubt about it. And he says, if I have my time again, perhaps I do 1 or 2 things a little differently. But the one thing you cannot always have to say about Schumacher is he loves racing for racing's sake, and he's really enjoying himself here in the closing stages.
Button fancies himself in 2nd place here as well, just like Michael Schumacher fancies P4 as he's squabbling with the man he says is exactly the right person to take his place at Ferrari. Kimi Raikkonen in front of him in his last drive from McLaren. And now he's going to get into that toe, that invisible hole in the air that the McLaren is punching to the assistance of the Ferrari. And Schumacher, the yellow flags have cleared. Now he's a free man to pitch it in there, but Raikkonen, thank goodness for that, somebody this afternoon doesn't want to just let Michael through too easily, although Fisichella's done a sterling job as well. But Raikkonen covered him off early and forced Michael to the outside. I wouldn't expect anything less.
Absolutely. Another racer, Kimi Raikkonen. He wouldn't be anything less than that if Ferrari has selected him to lead the post-Schumacher era at Ferrari. What a huge pressure on Raikkonen's shoulders. He's certainly expecting to be challenging for the World Championship straight away with the Ferrari team next year. He will get into a Ferrari for the first time in January. He'll not be released from his McLaren contract before that. Once again, Raikkonen, though, struggling in the Pico de Pato corner, and he's lost ground to Michael Schumacher. But Schumacher unable to really capitalise here in these tight, twisty corners in the middle part of the lap. Down the hill then, towards Mergulo and Yungkao corner, taken at 60 miles an hour before the climb up the hill. So this the final Grand Prix of Michael Schumacher's career. He's going out fighting, he's racing with Raikkonen, who's trying to block him into turn one. Schumacher's having none of it. They're side by side. Don't collide, guys, please don't collide. Raikkonen gives him room. Schumacher is through. The crowd go bananas, and that says everything you need to know about Michael Schumacher's spirit.
Raikkonen gave him just about the width of a Ferrari, and he decided to take it. Super brave stuff there from Michael Schumacher. Raikkonen thought he got that one covered off and was getting ready to take the corner. And Michael said, "Okay, I've still got enough space." And there's so much grip down there on the inside of turn one. Always has been. Michael knows that as well as anybody. And Kimi released him a little bit too early. Realised he'd made the mistake. Tried to squeeze him back one more time, but Schumacher takes the position. They're now 5.5 seconds adrift, and Michael Schumacher is of third place man Button, but he's only 4/10 behind Alonso. Button all over the back of Alonso, and Alonso cannot afford to tangle with Jenson Button.
It's going to be a grandstand finish to this Brazilian Grand Prix. Felipe Massa, the Sao Paulo driver, 25 years old, is out front in the lead. He's going to win this race, almost certainly. The battle for second, though, is between Alonso and Jenson Button, who started this Grand Prix in 14th place, and he's driven absolutely brilliantly here this afternoon. Schumacher has had no end of problems, lost a huge amount of time, and yet he is still in 4th place, just 6 seconds behind Jenson Button. Raikkonen is 5th. Fisichella 6th, Barrichello 7th, and 8th is Della Rosa. Retirements, David Coulthard in the Red Bull, both Toyotas of Trulli and Ralf Schumacher, and the Williams of Webber and Rosberg. It's been a totally eventful afternoon, worthy of Schumacher's last Grand Prix.
Alonso's had to get back on it. He cannot afford to get anywhere near Jenson Button. If those two tangle, Schumacher will be up into 2nd place, Massa will get out of the throttle, Schumacher will win the race and the World Championship. Alonso's had to get himself some air between him and Button in 3rd place.
The one saving grace for him, though, is that Massa has just crossed the start-finish line to begin his final lap of the Grand Prix. So it's a little bit of breathing space for him. You can see that he's looking in his mirrors, Massa. He's on his way round. Look at this crowd. They're going absolutely bananas, as well they might. He's less than 2 miles away from becoming the first Brazilian since Ayrton Senna in '93 to win his home Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher has just set the new fastest lap, a 1:12.1. He's throwing everything at it to try and close down Jenson Button, but it's a hopeless task, really. 5 seconds as he is adrift of the Englishman, who is set for a podium in the final round of this World Championship, and just a few corners to go for Massa.
Yeah, it's been a great drive, but it's not as great as his teammate, no doubt about it, Michael Schumacher, who's still putting in fastest sectors on the final tour of the Grand Prix.
You know why? Because he's going to try and set a fastest lap on his last ever Formula One lap. He's on target for it. Massa, though, wins the Brazilian Grand Prix. He comes across the start-finish line now, and he thoroughly deserves it. An absolutely brilliant performance from pole position. We wait now quite a long time, 20 seconds for Fernando Alonso. That's Massa's 2nd career victory after Turkey this year. He stops to pick up a Brazilian flag. Here comes Alonso, the new world champion. Back-to-back world championships for him. And there, Button on the podium. And Michael Schumacher does not set a new fastest lap on his final ever lap in a Formula One car. It was fast and furious stuff at the end. Button gets his podium. Alonso gets his world championship. Back-to-back titles. And, well, it's such a hard thing to do. He's the youngest man ever to be a double world champion and one of only 6 in the history of the sport to win back-to-back titles. That's how hard it is to do.
So what happened in the constructors then? I think Renault have just aced it, haven't they? With that 8 points for Alonso, 10 for Massa to win. Michael Schumacher 4th for Ferrari. That's going to be very tight, but I think Renault have still done it by 6 world championship points.
The slowdown lap for Massa. And I have to ask you an almost impossible question then. Brilliant drive in his final outing in a Formula One car by Michael Schumacher. Unbelievable pressure on the shoulders of Massa in front of his home crowd, just 25 years of age. Who is the driver of the day?
I think it's relatively easy, actually. Michael Schumacher, of course. He was 70 seconds adrift after his puncture.
Yeah, well done.
24 seconds behind the winner.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Merci, merci à tous. Thank you. Fantastic job. Fantastic. All season. All season.
Well, we thought it was
Thank
going
you.
away from them.
With you guys. What the final race. Both championships again. Thank you for all these years. It has been a pleasure for me to work with you. With this success, I wish you the best for the future.
And I'm now off to McLaren. So that's really what he's saying there. And Alonso then probably quite emotional. In fact, obviously very emotional inside the helmet there. And, well, strange that he's leaving that team in many respects, isn't it?
It is, but it's a new dawn for him at McLaren, a new dawn for Kimi Raikkonen at Ferrari next year, replacing Schumacher. That is the leaderboard of Michael Schumacher's last ever Grand Prix, his 250th Grand Prix meeting. He finishes in 4th place. The only thing he takes away from here is a fastest lap in his final Grand Prix. He doesn't take a win or the pole, but nevertheless, he has the memory of an absolutely blistering drive around Interlagos.
Now, it's not exactly protocol, but surely they're going to get Michael Schumacher up on the podium with the top 3 to so we can have a last look at him as such. But it doesn't. It's absolutely the way it works, not protocol. Alonso coasting back in. What must be going through his young mind?
Well, he's the right man to lead the sport forward. As a double world champion, he becomes the benchmark now. He's the one they've all got to beat. Raikkonen, Button, Kubica, all the rest of them. There's Juan Montoya in the, remember him? Used to drive for McLaren, now racing NASCAR in the USA. What a character he was. But as I say, Alonso, absolutely the right man in my mind to lead this sport forward. They've all got to try and beat him. And it's great that we've got a double world champion still in the field. He will be the only world champion in the field, of course, next year.
And a fully deserving world champion this year as well. He has put in some sensational drives, even races that he didn't win. He'll take those lucky overalls into next year, won't he?
Not very Ferrari, but it's very Brazilian, and it's very successful for Felipe Massa. What a place to win your 2nd Grand Prix. He's understandably euphoric. Rubens Barrichello has tried and failed for many, many years to win his home Grand Prix, and, well, Massa does it his first time here in a Ferrari.
Formula One in good hands. Felipe Massa, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen. We've got a lot of young talent coming in, like Kovalainen and Button, still with plenty to offer as well.
And Lewis Hamilton as well. There is the champion. As Massa celebrates his victory. Alonso celebrates his championship. Back-to-back world titles for the Spaniard. They'll be watching this in the Bernabeu Stadium, where Real Madrid are playing Barcelona later, and everybody was going to get in early to watch it. Chaotic scenes of pure joy for Renault, the Constructors' champions, and Alonso, the Drivers' champion.
Schumacher won't make it back into that top three Parc Ferme, of course, finished fourth. He'll get bundled up. There's quite an expensive car park a little bit behind there, you can see it, just to Massa's left. And there, finally, is Schumacher. It's been quite mellow and magnanimous all weekend, actually, Michael. Not something we've seen too much of in these last few years.
Nice shots there of Schumacher after his final Grand Prix. He's climbed out of the cockpit for the last time. He's taken his helmet off for the last time. And now he walks away with the satisfaction of knowing that in his final race, he gave it absolutely everything and reminded us of just what a top quality act he was.
Slow-mo replay then. Felipe Massa takes his second Grand Prix victory in front of an adoring home crowd. He was 18.6 seconds ahead of Alonso in the end. He backed off quite a lot in those final few tours.
And so the epitaphs will begin to be written about Schumacher's career. He's only driven for 3 teams in Formula One. That one outing for Jordan, his debut in '91, which announced him as such an exciting talent. He then went to Benetton, where he drove for 68 races, taking 19 wins. And interestingly, the Benetton team then morphed into Renault, and Alonso's career is almost identical to this point where he moves on. He's done 69 races and won 15 of them. So up to this point, great similarities between Alonso and Michael Schumacher. And in '96, of course, Schumacher moved across to the Ferrari team and led them, winning 72 times for Ferrari, claiming 7 World Drivers' Championships and 91 career victories.
I've watched every race Michael Schumacher drove as a teammate, as a competitor, as a TV commentator, and he is the most complete driver of all time, no doubt about it. I just wish he had 10 less wins, 1 less championship, and all of those negative moments didn't exist. I think we would be lining the route to applaud him out of the circuit tonight. There's some negativity around, and you can't help it. We know so many things from being in the paddock, and you just can't help those feelings, and it's a tragedy, it's a great shame, but what a drive today.
Well, I started in Formula One the year before Michael Schumacher, and our careers have completely overlapped, and I have to say that, in my view, certainly the bad things he did go no way towards overshadowing the magnitude of his achievement. There is the man who takes it on from him now. Fernando Alonso, the world champion. And there Ross Brawn for Ferrari to collect the Constructors' Cup. Expect we'll see those three up on the podium quite a lot next year. Kimi Raikkonen as well. Jenson Button there in third place. Terrific effort by him. It's been a vintage season of Formula One racing, and there is so much to look forward to next year. We could have 4 British drivers as Massa collects his trophy. We could have 4 British drivers in Formula One next year, with Anthony Davidson possibly at Super Aguri and Lewis Hamilton as a teammate of Alonso at McLaren. So much to look forward to. And collecting the cup for the winner today as a constructor, but not of the championship, Ross Brawn of Ferrari. I imagine he'll be probably fishing this time next year.
Now we think Ross is taking a sabbatical. It's the world champion's turn.
7 victories in the season. Consistency, resilience, defiance and speed have brought Alonso his 2nd world title. And good old Jenson, if he hadn't qualified 14th, where might he have ended up? It wasn't his fault, it was a technical glitch that put him in that position, but he drove magnificently today.
Yeah, one of his finest drives, and a good podium to be on for Jenson Button. Teammates, of course, with Alonso at Renault.
Well, no sign of Michael Schumacher up on the podium. It's Massa's day, it's Alonso's day. Schumacher walks away then from Formula One, bowing out. You have been watching one of the greats, if not the greatest driver of all time. He did it his way, and not everybody liked it, but we'll never see another like it in every sense.
And our thanks to James and Martin for this afternoon and for the season as well. But Felipe Massa, he's learned alongside Michael Schumacher, and he lives up to the legacy of Ayrton Senna to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. For Fernando Alonso, it's been a quiet afternoon. That's what he wanted. This is the celebration for a gloriously triumphant season. 25 years old. How much more is to come from the brilliant Spaniard? Schumacher into retirement at his amazing best. Button into the close season with a great deal of encouragement. But Felipe Massa is the toast of Sao Paulo. There is so much to discuss when we return. Let's confirm the details before we get into all the Interlagos emotion and the Brazilian Grand Prix press conference. Fernando Alonso, 2nd in this Brazilian Grand Prix behind Felipe Massa, is world champion once again. He successfully defends his title despite an absolutely heroic challenge from Michael Schumacher this afternoon. And the Constructors' Championship, that stays with Renault as well by a narrow margin of some 5 points. Renault edge out Ferrari. They hang on to both the driver's title and the constructor's title. But Felipe Massa has won this Brazilian Grand Prix, the homeboy from Sao Paulo, and he's in the press conference right now.
Felipe, you're the first Brazilian to win your home Grand Prix since Ayrton Senna. You need to say more than that, really.
Yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it? I think it's after 13 years that a Brazilian driver doesn't win the Brazilian Grand Prix. And for me, it's just amazing. I mean, to be here in front of my people, in my first year that I have a good car, I mean, a fantastic car, because after the race today, I think it was maybe the easiest race of my life, because I could control everything, you know, I was not pushing a lot. And, you know, really happy to have that moment. And I'm sure it's just difficult to explain. I mean, it's just very, very, very special for me.
Talk about your emotions on the podium and the slowdown lap and what it means to be a Brazilian to win in this Formula One crazy country.
Well, it's just a dream come true. I mean, you see the whole people, you know, bringing the flag, screaming your name, and really jumping and dancing, whatever, and just for you. So I think it's difficult to explain. I'm sure whatever driver will love to be in my position. Fernando won his home Grand Prix this year, and I'm sure it was very, very special for him. So anyway, I mean, it's just the best day of my life.
Congratulations to you, Felipe. Fernando, turning to you. You had to score points here to clinch the championship. You did that well and truly, finishing second, and you've won back-to-back World Championships.
Yes, has been a fantastic weekend, and especially the race, very long race, obviously, for us, because we only need 1 point to become champion, and for sure, if I can help the team to become constructors champion as well, I was ready to do it, and you know, everything was as planned, and you know, the Ferrari were too quick, but we managed to overtake him in the first pit stop, and then a lot of pressure from Jenson, but we managed to finish second. And as you say, doesn't matter the position. The important thing today was become champion again for the second consecutive time, and we did it. So has nothing more to say. It's an unbelievable feeling.
Could I invite you to say a few words about Michael Schumacher in his last Grand Prix today? Finished fourth, only 5 seconds behind you at the end after a puncture he incurred when passing your teammate. But very close rivalry between you two all season.
Yeah, it has been very close, and you know, I think it was good to fight with him. I always said that to become champion when Michael is still on the track has maybe more value than when he retired, and I was extremely lucky to win the last 2 championships he raced it, and you know, I think we all the drivers, we wish him the best for his new life with family, and you know, has been for us a pleasure to race with him.
And finally, Fernando, if I can just ask how you paced your race once you knew Michael was in trouble. You did obviously defend against Rubens, but at one point Jarno Trulli got inside you.
Yes, well, when Michael had the problem with the tire, so in lap 3 or 4 after the safety car, we already turned down the refs because the championship was immediately in a good move. So, you know, I think we controlled the race basically from the beginning, not pushing any more than what we should do.
Thank you, Fernando. And Jenson, congratulations. A great drive from 14th on the grid after an electronic problem yesterday to your 3rd podium of the year.
Yeah, I mean, for these two, it's a very, very special day. Felipe in his home country winning Grand Prix, and then Fernando clinching the World Championship. So, got to say a massive well done to both of them. But even for me, you know, coming from 14th to 3rd after yesterday's problems is a great result, and perfect to end the year. Yeah, so it's been a fantastic day, and probably one of the most enjoyable races I've had. You know, fighting my way through the field. It wasn't just done on pit stops or from people stopping.
And the one man who wasn't in that press conference, maybe he should have been, Michael Schumacher. Quick reaction, Mark Blundell, to the manner in which he bowed out of Formula One today.
You know, it's a fantastic race, Steve, and I think that was determination from Michael Schumacher. We've seen it time and time again. Calmness of the new world champion again, Alonso, and then starring roles for me with Felipe Massa and Jenson Button. I think they had outstanding drives.
OK, we'll have much more reaction from here at Interlagos in just a couple of minutes' time.
F1 on ITV, sponsored by Shell V-Power.
Panorama lunii, положение нет включенных.
To date, NASA has filed 6,509 patents. In developing the A6, Audi filed 9,621.
Tesco Mobile Extra Tariff. Top up just £15 a month and you could text 300 people at 5p a go. Or call 150 people at 10p a minute. Or even call a loved one for 2.5 hours. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
F1 on ITV, sponsored by Shell V-Power.
Felipe Massa has won this Brazilian Grand Prix, but Michael Schumacher has reminded us of exactly what Formula One is going to be missing in the next few years with his retirement. And he went into retirement in the most stunning fashion, but as in Japan, luck just not with him today.
Yeah, lady luck run out on him today because only 10 laps into the race, and unfortunately for him, because of the prior accident we'd seen with the two Williamses, it looked like he'd picked up some debris and it punctured the tyre. At one point we felt that maybe Fisichella had just tapped the rear end of his car and crept in on the back tyre there with an end plate from the front wing, but I think it's just debris got in the side wall of the tyre, and that was basically his race ruined in terms of where he could have come to. I think he had a possibility of actually getting right to the front of this race.
Yeah, and at that point, after the puncture, a mere mortal would have just coasted round at the back of the field and gone into retirement. Not Schumacher. He went for absolutely everything.
Oh, he was outstanding. I mean, one of the drives, I think, of the season definitely for him, and also over the last few years, I think, because he's made so many overtaking manoeuvres today, and I think some of them were class manoeuvres at the end of all of it. I mean, some real outstanding stuff.
Well, let's take a look at the manner in which Michael Schumacher went through the field. A lot of them were fairly polite, it has to be said.
Well, I think he had a little bit of help out there with a few people just making sure they didn't get in his way, but they're just clean moves. But the Ferrari obviously got a lot of straight line speed advantage. See him going by the Honda there, just tucking himself into turn one. Yet again here, comes up behind the Renault of Fisichella. Fisichella, a little bit of a thorn in his side time and time again when he got there, and actually pushed him and pressured him to making a mistake there.
And there was a point towards the end of the race that the World Championship looked back on again, especially after he'd gone inside Kimi Raikkonen like this.
Oh, definitely. And this, for me, was a great move coming in there. Kimi Raikkonen's not an easy guy to get by, but Schumacher just knew he just had to make the move. He's got a little bit of space to play with. Raikkonen also there being helpful, but not giving him anything to really work with. But again, that's World Championship style and World Championship overtaking manoeuvres. Real commitment.
Absolutely amazing. A great world champion bows out. Another great world champion continues, Fernando Alonso.
I think Alonso was outstanding as well. I mean, it's such a young guy with a calm head on his shoulders there. He's still got a lot more to come from him over the years, but I think we had a great race today, and we've got some real stars and many more next year.
What do you think he might achieve at McLaren? But there's a team that has gone through the season without a win.
That's a tough one for McLaren, because that's a long time since they've not had a Grand Prix win in the season, and I think they've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and I think maybe Alonso going there will give that some boost, but they've still got to get some personnel in and get an engine which is a little bit more reliable maybe, and get something solid.
Jensen takes something solid and positive into the new season, doesn't he?
I think JB's drive today was great, and only a shame that he didn't have the traction control problems in qualifying, because I think he would have been on that podium a little bit further up, second, maybe even knocking on the door for a win. Honda's looking good. Jensen Button, superb.
And on today's evidence, Massa, Raikkonen, that Ferrari combination is going to take some beating next season.
Well, I think that's also going to be the interest for all of us. We're going to see Kimi Raikkonen, the Iceman, sitting in that red car. Can he deliver what we've seen from Michael Schumacher and now Massa?
OK, quick reminder before we go that on the ITV F1 website you can get all the latest information on what's happening in Formula One, and also our competition that can win you
challenges pushing themselves to the limit in the African desert, the final chapter at 9. The story of royal photography before that, and the moment everything changed.
Up until the 1980s, royal photography was something of a gentleman's sport, a relatively civilized pursuit. An official engagement here, a bit of a tour there. Nothing too challenging. And then, the heir to the throne found a girlfriend.
She was the answer to a photographer's prayer.
It was phenomenal. You didn't miss a thing she did.
This bashful teenage Sloane would soon shatter the press photography peace.
Oh, crikey, the rivalries in the press corps were extraordinary.
The gentlemen of the press pack turned into salivating hounds.
Punching each other in the face outside.
Elbows flying, there'd be cursing and swearing.
For 17 years, it was a roller coaster.
But the press were heading towards one spectacular derailment. They had whipped themselves up into an unsustainable frenzy. The hunters would soon find out what it was to be hunted.
Out. O-U-T, out.
I'd been there. I had been in pursuit of Diana.
Could the People's Princess ever be replaced?
If you published a photograph or a feature on Camilla, we would get complaints.
And could Clarence House manage the photographers and pull off a PR coup?
Second wife syndrome, first wife died, which is really bad.
Camilla's been with us a long while, but as the Wicked Witch, not as the fairy princess.
At the end of the 1970s, the British public was not too bothered about the private lives of the royals. The job of royal photographer inspired barely a stifled yawn.
I remember the Queen went on a state visit to Sweden, and there wasn't one member of the British press accompanying her. Not one TV crew, nothing. That's how boring and uninterested people were.
The relationship that the royals had with the press was more a kind of a mutual understanding that we reported what they did. They occasionally turned out to justify their existence to the taxpayer. And the press weren't that excited about them.
There weren't too many of us photographing the royal family. I could go to a polo match at Windsor to photograph the Prince and be 20 feet from him while he sort of prepared, you know, his horses and what have you.
Security was very low-key. You could park your car, you could, you know, pick up your cameras and walk sort of up within feet of the Prince of Wales, and he would chat to you and say hello. It was just very straightforward and very innocent. One of my first photographs was of Prince Charles up at Smith's-Lawn, and it was taken on a very old lens that I'd borrowed from my father. I could hardly lift it up, it was so long. It was like a bazooka, it was so long. I could just about lift it up. And he was just very casual, leaning on his polo pony. And it's not a technically fantastic picture, it's just sort of a little moment in time of a very relaxed young prince, and I think it just sums up how relaxed the atmosphere was in those days. You know, and he was just a very carefree young man in those days, and it's just quite a nice sort of innocent picture, really.
This lovely bubble of innocence was about to be pricked. Everything was about to change for the carefree young prince.
I was up covering the Braemar Games, and on the morning of Braemar Games, Charles goes fishing. Just, you know, the royals are such creatures of habit. So I went looking for him, and having been based up there, I knew the places to look. And I knew where the pools were, where you had to leave your car by the roadside and walk 50 yards through the trees. And I walked 50 yards through the trees at one of the spots, where Charles was, a girl beside him, turned her back and went and hid behind a tree. I took a few photographs of her climbing up with her back towards me and got behind a tree. The next thing I saw was a compact with a mirror on it, and she was using it to see where I was and continued to walk up this bank, keeping the tree between me and her so I couldn't photograph her. I thought, my God, who's this?
Looking through the story of photography and the royals and trying to identify key moments of change, key moments of transition, undoubtedly the arrival of Diana on the scene changed things forever.
I think Princess Diana was an absolute walking photo opportunity at a time when lots of other royals couldn't get themselves photographed.
She was very pretty, blushed like fury when you photographed her, put her head down, but would squint up under her fridge to see where you were, and she gave this big doe-eyed, shy girl look from that. But she was very capable and quite smart.
Young, beautiful, glamorous, she fueled the photographers. I'm not sure how do you begin to describe that relationship.
She was so photogenic, absolutely. She was the answer to a photographer's prayer.
There was definitely a before and after moment. I would probably home in on that photograph of her backlit holding the child when she was still working in the kindergarten.
Halfway through photographing her in this little park, the sun came out, and it was just brilliant. You know, the whole picture came alive.
This was a girl just appeared in the public eye, and we loved her for it. You know, she was natural, she was unaffected, and she was a very, very pretty girl.
She then became the most important member of the royal family, whether you liked it or not. It was phenomenal. You didn't miss a thing she did. If she went to a school in East London, or if she went to Argentina, you went because you couldn't afford not to, because she was going to make great pictures.
That was typical of Diana. There she was, she'd done up in goggles and hats, and, you know, she would just giggle. She was just such a fresh young thing at the time. And she would see the funny side of everybody walking about wearing silly hats and outfits and so on.
And it was just this revelation, you know, oh my God, somebody in the royal family is human.
She was incredibly photogenic. She had all the ingredients to become a star through photography. She wasn't at ease, she wasn't natural in television contexts. The painted portraits that we know of her just don't capture that spark, that energy, that really seductive appeal that we see in the still photography.
The rivalries in the press corps were extraordinary. There would be fist fights, there would be elbows flying, there would be cursing and swearing.
The times I've opened my hotel door in the press hotel and they'd all be fighting, punching each other in the face outside, and the lies we used to all tell each other were unbelievable. The lies, the stories we would concoct. We would physically hide behind pillars and things and make out we weren't there. I mean, all sorts of, you know, I mean, it was almost like a comedy show at times.
When we'd gone abroad with Charles, there's maybe 4 or 5 photographers travelled from the UK with him. With Charles and Diana, or Diana or on, there'd be 70 or 80 and a waiting list of 200.
There were hard tours, they were long. I remember one of the first major tours was 6 weeks in Australia. And what was remarkable, I think, about that trip was daily papers published those pictures every single day without fail, didn't miss a day. There was that much interest.
I can remember the press secretary pleading with the photographers, would someone please go and take a picture of Prince Charles? But there was no point in sending a picture to London that didn't have Princess Diana in it. You would just be wasting your time, wasting their time, wasting money sending it because they just wasn't interested.
No one could have predicted the impact that this blushing adolescent was to cause. Press photographers threw off their comfy slippers and transformed themselves from complacent slouchers into hungry, ruthless predators. And as the price on a Diana photograph grew and grew, so did the lengths to which these snappers would go to hunt down their exclusives.
I had the biggest lens I'd ever handled in my life. It was a 2000mm with a 3x doubler on it. So it was big and ugly. I took the photographs over 1.5 miles away. My camera was tied to a mangrove tree at the front of it. It had a tripod in the middle and a monopod at the back end of it. Diana came onto the beach, James Whittaker's beside me, and he's watching through his binoculars, and Diana came onto the beach wearing a sarong. Within seconds, the sarong came off and she was wearing a little bikini. There she is, got her. I said, yeah, got her. James just said, oh, shit. And when these pictures published, all hell let loose. Nobody'd ever seen a royal in a bikini before.
I can remember coming back to London and there being an absolute bedlam here. There's questions being asked in the House about intrusion, and there were other editors of other newspapers condemning the Sun on the radio. And even when I got to the office of the Sun, the office driver just spat on the floor as I walked in, as I was dirt on his boots.
The Queen's issued a statement saying this is the blackest day in British journalism, and it's been raised in Parliament. The editor's been fired. Now, what? It's a huge controversy. We were playing this massive game at the time, and you know, we were caught up in this very glamorous girl, and up until then, nobody had got into any kind of trouble. There had been the odd detective getting shirty, or the odd press editor getting shirty because people had been pushy in front of them, but nobody had ever got in trouble for photographing them. And I was the first, and you know, that was the egg was broken at that stage, and we had to live with the omelette rather than being the pretty egg.
After the flesh-bearing bikini shots, the only person not blushing or retreating in shame was Diana. For her, the intrusion wasn't embarrassing, it was empowering. She was beginning to discover how powerful a picture could be.
I'm sure Princess Diana studied her photographs. Everyone else in that racket studies their photographs all the time, so it'd be astonishing if she didn't. And she learnt, if I do that, how about it? And because she was an instinctive person, she had EI, emotional intelligence, she understood what people were thinking and what people wanted in a way that more formally cleverer people wouldn't.
One of my first pictures I ever took of her walking along the street in London, she looked so young and so naive, and from that girl that I first photographed to the woman she became was just two different people totally.
even in what appeared to be the most casual photograph, she would say, "You want that, don't you?"
The Princess was on the stage at a Red Cross meeting, and I got a seat right in the front row. She looked down, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I need you to do this, to see the haircut." So she went like that, looking right. It was obviously terribly interested in the speaker. And then she did that, and then this smirk came across her face, knowing that, you know, here she was, hundreds of people in the hall, and she was doing a photo session.
Diana clearly learnt very quickly the importance of the relationships between herself and photographers. She learnt how to pose, she learnt how to work with photographers, and she realised the extent to which she could control and guide the image that was going to be created of her.
I remember once in Toronto, the Royal Yacht was berthed there, and they were on an official tour, and William and Harry were flown out to join them.
We were quite a long way away, looking up at the Royal Yacht, which was, you know, a pretty big vessel to look at from a distance, and the doors flew open one end, and out came William and Harry. And you could just see them because they were quite little, you know, you could only just see sort of their chins upwards across the edge of the ship. And they stood there and they were sort of like hopping around all excited because their mum and dad had arrived.
Of course, it's all protocol, all these things, and the Admiral was there to greet them, as he always is, any member of the royal family. And he salutes, and Prince Charles was saluting, but Diana didn't bother with that. She just ran past him and saw the boys and threw her arms out. I remember she was wearing this red and white check jacket, and she threw her arms out really wide and just hugged the boys.
But on that occasion, I had an autofocus that I was trying for a new camera, you know, coming, the autofocus, and because all of us photographers were being very snobby about it, saying, autofocus, what sort of professional uses one of those? And none of us would touch them. Anyway, this camera was fantastic because she had a very, very bright check jacket on. The autofocus loved it. It locked on her and it followed her so that every picture I took was in focus, whereas my colleagues were shooting without one and they couldn't get it. They had the content in the frame, but they couldn't focus, so they didn't get the picture.
To look at it, you'd think that Diana hadn't seen the boys for a year. In fact, it was 8 days.
The fact is, Prince Charles did his duty. He spoke to the Admiral, walked in, and of course, the next day it was, you know, Diana, wonderful pictures of her, but of course Charles hugged them too, and Charles kissed them too. And, you know, he was then got this label as a cold father.
Unfortunately for Charles, as the marriage visibly nosedived, it became a custody battle for public affection. Winning it would come down to image, and in that respect, Charles was totally outclassed.
It's very difficult and to speculate on how knowing or how, one might even say manipulative, Diana might have been in setting up situations for the camera. She knew how powerful a photograph could be. One is reminded of that photograph of her seated alone and melancholic in front of the Taj Mahal.
This is towards the end of the marriage. This, I think, was in '92. And Prince Charles was going off to sign all these, or to witness all these billion-dollar contracts that British business had fought and won in India. And nobody went. You know, everybody went with Diana to the Taj Mahal, and Prince Charles flew off to this city with an empty plane. All the seats that were booked for the press were empty.
It was a magnificent, superb photograph. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew when it was going to be published. You know, it was this lonely, tragic figure who had been betrayed by a husband who was 12 years older than her, and a mistress who was known as the Wicked Witch, the most vilified woman in Britain, if not the world. Yeah, it was a brilliant photo opportunity, and my golly, she milked it for all it was worth.
She was also very good on a couple of the royal tours that I went on. He would be talking to somebody, and she'd do this. She'd go... She'd just sort of turn her head to one side and look very sort of bored or melancholy. And of course that she knew again that that was the ideal picture, that we could all go, is there a rift in the royal marriage? And it was quite clear by then that there was.
Diana used the press to her own means, and very cleverly. And one of the most startling ones was the night that Prince Charles was going on to confess about himself and Camilla. Diana turned up at the Serpentine Gallery wearing a Caroline Walker dress that had been in her wardrobe for nearly 2 years, and she looked sensational. So instead of Charles being in the front page, looking like an old fogey, talking about having an affair with Camilla, Diana stole his thunder, and she used the press perfectly to do it. She'd been one of the world's great PRs if she'd ever been let loose on us.
But using the press during the breakdown of one's marriage is a Faustian pact. You can never use them more than they will use you.
Out. O-U-T, out.
There are certain elements of the paparazzi. I think they just take it too far. You know, it's unfortunate when I think they pursue too far. They push the boundaries just too much.
You shouldn't have to fear a photographer. He should be a bit of a nuisance, but you should possibly know him by name, and you should know that, you know, if your car broke down, he would be the guy there to help push it. Not that he would take full advantage all the time of everything that happened to you.
I wasn't enjoying the job anymore, you know, all the sort of background problems with the paparazzi and the access to taking pictures, the frustrations of it. And obviously she wasn't happy. You could see she wasn't happy, you know, obviously everything was going wrong with the marriage. And, you know, she was a very unhappy person to photograph. I wasn't enjoying it. She obviously wasn't enjoying it. And it sort of came to a sort of point where you just thought, oh, I want a break from this. You know, I felt uncomfortable being there.
With her marriage over, Diana had her future as a demoted royal to consider and would need to work out what form that ex-royal image should take. As it happened, she didn't have to look very far.
She looked at the cover of Vogue magazine, and there was a photographer called Patrick de Marchalier who was starting to do these very natural photographs on beaches of, you know, models, probably weren't their children, someone's child that they'd borrowed, but that whole sort of mother-child thing, very natural, very beautiful. Saw that and she thought, I'll have him, he can do my pictures. And those pictures were a massive turning point in royal photography, because it could have graced the pages of Vogue, and not because of who she was, but because of how stunning she looked in them.
Patrick de Marchilier's pictures of Diana, I think they're wonderful, they're beautifully lit, he's got a great atmosphere, she's with him the whole time. I just think they're magical. I think he's done some of the best pictures, actually.
At the end of 1996, Diana lost her HRH title. No longer part of the firm, she made the point clear with a spectacular public shedding of her royal skin. She auctioned her clothes off for charity. To promote the sale, Diana commissioned a photographer who had never taken a royal photograph in his life. The portrait session that followed would very quickly become the most successful and iconic photo shoot of her life.
I think we're used to royal portraits that are quite stiff in a way, no? That was the association to aristocracy and to nobility, was the stiffness, you know, not to ever be seen off guard. And in a way, I mean, I've said this often, but in this period of Princess Diana, she had just lost her Royal Highness to her title. And in a way, I guess she could give up that formality a bit. You know, she could be a little bit more like any of us. So much of it was good. You know, when you look back, you think, wow, this woman really looked amazing. I wouldn't say she's perfect physically, but the energy, the personality was magical.
She wanted to say, I'm doing very nicely, thank you, in my new world. I'm doing very nicely, thank you, post-divorce. I'm now, as Americans would say, I've moved on.
The pictures are truly relaxed. They are both incredibly beautiful and stylish and sophisticated, but wonderfully relaxed. And that is a very, very hard mix to achieve. It is Mario Testino's strength to be able to create that mood, and I'm sure Diana knew that, and she knew how to just go with the moment and give herself up to the process.
De Marchalier had made her look very natural and very beautiful. Testino made her look sexy, but again, not in a very obvious way. I think they were the first pictures of Diana where men looked at them and sort of went, oh, you know, she looked great.
He knows exactly what he's doing, but what he's doing is going with the moment, and he knows how to relax into it and not worry too much about focus or depth of field or what's happening with the light, and just trust that his instinct, his energy will bring something out of his subject, that the moment will become magical and he will fix it on film. And he pulls it off.
You know, it's funny for me, when I trained as a photographer, you get so many rules of how a good photography is supposed to be. She's supposed to be sharp, the composition has to be perfect, the light, the decent. Sometimes you realize that all those rules are meant to be broken, really, because in this picture, even though it doesn't have the qualities that maybe other pictures have that are beautiful, quality, beautiful, for me, it's for me one of my favorites, you know. I'm a sucker for joy, you know, for happiness, for excitement. I would love my life to be like that on a full-time basis.
She managed to capture the look of the moment, her moment and the moment. Lots of women looked at that and thought, that's how I want to look. And normally, people don't think that about royal ladies now.
For 17 years, it was a roller coaster. You know, you either got on or you stayed off. And if you got on, it was a very much up and down. You know, one minute she was in a great mood, and the pictures were like, you couldn't believe it. The pictures were just sensational. Another day, she had a face on her that you could chop wood with. You know, you'd know you're getting nothing. You know, and it was, I mean, she'd have you ordered out the room, even if you were the rota. You know, the pool. She wouldn't care. And one of the saddest things I think I can remember in my whole life is were those last pictures of Diana walking through the revolving doors at the Ritz Hotel the night she died. And she had that face on her that you knew she was in bad temper, bad humour, you know. So that is not a nice, for me, thinking that she was like that when she died.
It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this. A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair.
On the Saturday of the funeral, I felt really tense, miserable, and when I heard Charles's speech, I was shocked. I'd been there. I had been in pursuit of Diana. And I think a lot of us felt guilty and wished for a happy ever after.
I did go back to photograph Diana's funeral. It was a very difficult decision because I didn't really want to do it. You know, my first reaction was that I don't want to do it. I want to lock myself away. I don't want anyone to think I'm a photographer, and you know, because everybody was very anti-photographer at that point. And so, you know, I had not intended to do it, But I did in the end, my sort of father talked me into doing it, and he said, you know, this has been a big part of your life. You photographed this woman, it's been very historical, and whatever your feelings are as a professional, you must go and photograph the end of the story. It was a bit of a blubbering mess all day, and thank goodness for autofocus, because I had my autofocus on and I didn't have to focus too much. Being very emotional. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it was, you know, it was someone I'd worked with for so long, you know, it was, I found it very distressing, and, you know, I couldn't be that sort of cold, cool professional on the day, you know, that wasn't me at all. But anyway, I photographed it, and it was a day I will never, ever forget.
I got a phone call. I was walking around Hyde Park photographing the flowers outside Kensington Palace, and I got a phone call from one of the Prince's press officers to say that he and Prince William and Prince Harry were going to come and look at the flowers outside Kensington Palace, and would I shoot the pool on that? I shot these pictures, and it was amazing how they coped with the crowd and looking at that scene. Then I got back to my office, and one of the girls who worked for me was working on the pictures on the screen. I said, could I have a look? And there was a picture of, I find it very hard to talk about it. There was a picture of Prince Harry, and his face was so creased up. He was on the point of just collapsing. And I turned to Melissa, who worked for me then. I said, has this picture gone out? We've got to kill this picture. I just cannot put this picture out.
Following Diana's death, the public needed a scapegoat and immediately looked towards the paparazzi and the press. The royal photographers realized that this time it was their own public image that needed some careful work.
When we lost Diana, the whole thing changed. For a start, they opened up all the windows at Buckingham Palace and let the fresh air in. They employed proper press officers that were positive about getting good publicity for the royal family, not just being arrogant and saying, we don't discuss that, and putting the phone down on you. You know, these were people that are there to help you.
This newfound cooperation may well have been through gritted teeth, but they had little choice. With Charles Spencer's words still ringing in their ears, the press knew they were under scrutiny. Everyone was waiting to see how they would handle the fragile young heirs.
These pictures paint a portrait of Prince William at a new turning point in his life. At Eton, he's enjoyed almost total protection from the press, and he was coaxed into allowing this degree of access as a way of saying thank you.
Prince William didn't like the press, he didn't like the media, and he certainly didn't trust any of them. But they agreed to leave him alone during his school years. And this generosity didn't go unnoticed. As a reward for their altruism, Clarence House gave one lucky photographer a commission to take some pictures to mark William's 18th birthday.
He was enthusiastic about it. He had ideas of his own. And obviously between myself and the television crew, we would work together and try and record and create a set of photographs which would illustrate William's time at Eton. And they were really as a thank you to the media for leaving him alone, for giving him the privacy that he needed at school. My favourite photograph out of the entire set is the black and white photograph of William walking down the corridor. We were just walking around school. It was the easiest thing to do. We said, right, let's go for a wander. We've got a bit of time spare. Let's just walk, talk, and see what happens. The light was particularly good. It was a lovely soft light that came in through the cloisters. And when I looked back, I thought, well, you know, this could actually make a picture.
The press had behaved. The deal had worked. It had worked so well that they agreed to stay away for another 4 years while Prince William was at college. And again, in return, they were rewarded with a photo opportunity in his final year.
Before William went to university, I doubted very much whether William would continue as a member of the royal family. I thought he hated it. He hated everything to do with the media. He hated the fact that he was in this electronic goldfish bowl on show to everyone. But since he had those 4 years when he was media-free, when everybody stuck to the deal and left him alone to make his mistakes in private, it's turned him into a superb young man. And I think he's now embraced this role that he has, and he does it with great enthusiasm.
Being out of the limelight during those bad-skin, wobbly hormone years was a blessing for the princes. William and Harry emerged more confident and more in control of their image. And when it came to obligatory birthday portraits, if history and their mother had taught them anything, it was that there could only be one photographer for the job.
The Testino picture of Harry on his 21st was fantastic. It's just really natural. He looks like a 21-year-old. He doesn't look like some kind of staid old fart, you know, and he's sort of leaning on a motorbike, very sort of Steve McQueen, Great Escape, you know. And again, that's so much better than him sort of sitting on a box in full regalia.
He made them look sort of Top Gun-ish. I think Testino is very good at making people look Top Gun-ish. So it's a latter-day sort of teen swoon idol thing.
Testino's portraits managed to be very relaxed and very engaging, and clearly the royals realised that that is something that a very big public will respond very favourably to. They want to see that warmer human side of the royals.
It's a hard line because you have to keep that tradition and at the same time let it live and breathe in, you know, the eras of today. We can't expect the entire English population to be allowed to change, but the royals have to stay as wax figures. You know, it just doesn't mean anything. I think they have to go with the times.
I think a good, relaxed photograph of the royal family, it's always in the eyes. You can see when they're comfortable with the photographer, which is why Snowdon and Litchfield always got great pictures, because they knew him and there was a warmth there that there might not have been with other photographers. When they try and say, hey, don't we look relaxed, it doesn't work.
Testino was an interesting choice for Prince Charles, and I'm not sure it was wholly successful, because I think it's probably Prince Charles's fault rather than Testino's. I'm sure Prince Charles thought, me doing a real thing, feeding the chickens, will be convincing and sympathetic. And most people in the real world don't feed chickens. And they don't feed chickens in the way that Prince Charles actually appeared to be doing it. The whole composition is sort of slightly uncomfortable.
I don't think Prince Charles has any clue about his image. I don't think he has any interest in his image, you know. He's been wearing the same safari suit on foreign tours for about 500 years, you know. He's very aristocratic like that. If he could, I'm sure he'd come out with the same old jacket, you know, with the frayed arms and the frayed collar if he was allowed to. He just has no self-image at all, which is part of his charm. I mean, where Prince Charles has probably used PR effectively for the very first time is in the introduction of Camilla into his life.
I think at the beginning, I mean, there was a lot of hostility towards her, and as I say, if you published a photograph or a feature on Camilla, we would get complaints.
Second wife syndrome, first wife died, which is really bad kind of scenario to deal with, you know. Just ask Heather Mills McCartney, or whatever she's called. You come along and you're the bad person. And of course, Camilla also had an affair with Prince Charles whilst he was married to Princess Diana, so double bad person. So her reinvention has been quite astonishing.
We did start using photographs of her in Hello. Not with Charles, though. They were never together. It was obvious that she was becoming very important. You know, she wasn't just going to be going away.
The first step in the PR campaign was to come out and be seen together in public. The moment was chosen, and Clarence House gave the press a less than subtle tip-off. His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales and his escort Miss Parker Bowles might possibly be leaving the Ritz around, say, exactly 11:55 on Friday the 29th of January. Arthur Edwards had his ladder at the ready.
When Camilla did the first picture with Camilla and Charles at the Ritz, you know, I was there on the Wednesday morning at 10:30, and the job wasn't until the Friday evening. And by the time Friday evening came, there must have been 500 people there.
This was the picture event of the decade, and no self-respecting royal photographer was going to miss it for the world.
Half of Fleet Street's presses won't run until about midnight tonight, so there's a lot of editors sitting back there with goosebumps right now. There's a lot at stake, as you can imagine.
For the gentlemen of the press, this was like the glory days spent pursuing front-page-worthy royals. The fun had returned.
We did a ring round as soon as the first ladder went down.
Yeah.
We all phoned each other, and it ended up, I think the core five of us ended up with that prime position.
Yeah.
And you were right, by the end there were 97 ladders outside the door of the Ritz, and we had the 5 best spots.
At last, my love has come.
You know, we never dreamt that this would ever happen, really. I mean, it was amazing, and the amount of photographers there, and the flashbulbs were just going off everywhere. I mean, it was blinding. It must have been blinding for them, but it was great, you know, because the first time they appeared together.
It was a phenomenal success. The photographers lapped it up. The papers lapped it up. The public lapped it up. But this wasn't the get-out-of-jail card Camilla and Charles might have hoped for. They still had work to do.
Camilla's been with us a long while, but as the Wicked Witch, not as the fairy princess.
I mean, when you think back to April 2005, there was a wave of indifference and indeed outright hostility to Camilla and to the idea of them getting married.
This was the woman that, you know, 2 years ago was called the Rottweiler, and the other woman and the third person in the marriage.
But 6 years after the Ritz photo session, the opportunity finally arose for the one photograph that was going to secure for Camilla the very thing she and Charles had been working towards all that time: public acceptance.
When the blessing ceremony had finished, into that sort of spring sunshine came a radiant Duchess of Cornwall and a smiling Prince of Wales. And they looked so happy and so content. They looked like the weight of the world had been lifted off their shoulders.
I mean, she looked fantastic in her wedding dress when she came out of the church. And I think that warmed a lot of women to her. They thought, God, she scrubbed up quite well there, you know, she looks good.
It's such a simple photograph. There's nothing complex about it, photographically. And it just made one of those royal pictures that makes you smile, and you sort of realise, yes, you've got what you came for.
At the moment, she's being brought along very cleverly by Prince of Wales's public relations team at Clarence House, and she is rarely seen out on her own. She is nearly always with her husband and in support of her husband, and she is being quite brilliant at that, I have to say.
I think what Camilla is doing is working towards creating the two of us. It's the two of us photography, it's consort photography, and I think she's very carefully avoiding being a one-off look-at-me star, because I think that's the precedent you're working against. That's the Diana precedent. She's saying, I'm a proper consort, I'm a proper wife.
When photographing the most photographed family in the world, it can be difficult to catch something extraordinary. When they do, the photographers are rewarded for their skill and serendipity at the annual Picture Editors Awards.
The point, I guess, is to allow photographers to feel good about what they do and to have their work judged by a jury of their peers.
The royal category, it's exactly what it says. It's a picture which features a member of the royal family. It will have to be an absolutely cracking picture. It's one of the most popular categories going, and the 4 pictures tonight are absolutely superb pictures, which on their day, any photographer here in any category would have been pleased to have taken.
So what is considered a good royal photograph today?
With royal photography, a great picture will be someone looking at you, which is very important, a nice clean background, probably them smiling. Might seem like very sort of easy things to get, but quite a lot of the time it's not. I think it was sort of a combination of luck, of getting all those facts, getting the ball and the picture of Harry looking sort of quite determined, and I think it all just sort of came together in one shot.
A lot of it is down to having a sharp eye and a good lens. He was in focus, and he was looking straight down the barrel of my camera, which was even better. And it was the frame either side of that, couldn't use it because you couldn't see him.
Captured the Queen in an instant that she's only as human as we all are. It's just a different angle to what you normally will see the Queen as.
There seems almost a wish amongst photographers and editors to take the pomp and circumstance out of royal and maybe catch candid and humorous moments.
A lot of royal photography these days is trying to make an extraordinary person look ordinary, and that involves trying to catch an expression that a normal person would do. A lot of it is just making these people look normal. I wanted a picture of the Queen walking through a doorway in profile and only her in focus, everything out of focus. She surprised me by not walking through the doorway, but standing just slightly inside the doorway. I couldn't see her at all, but the photographers who were in the proper position were firing away, and I was thinking, I've lost this. I've completely lost this. I might as well just go home now. But unbeknownst to me, the person behind her said to the Queen, can you just, Your Majesty, if you'd like to look to your left, you'll see what we've done in this room. And she quickly poked her head round. She came into my vision for a split second. I fired my flash, and she ducked her head back very quickly. I didn't even know if I had the picture until I looked at the back of the camera, and luckily, looking straight at me, miraculously in focus. It was a great shot, yeah.
And so to the awards. Our first category of the evening is the Fujifilm Royal Photographer of the Year. And it's this candid portrait of the monarch and her consort wins the award for Karwai Tang, Alpha Press Agency. He collects a cheque for £1,000.
These pictures suggest that while the salacious pap shots of half-dressed royals have been largely consigned to history, we still seem to like candid photographs, but not intrusive ones. We want a glimpse of the royals as real people, but not at the cost of their dignity. On the morning of the Queen's 80th birthday, the usual suspects arrive early to bag a good spot in the press pen.
I am outstanding, actually, but I'm outstanding most mornings. But when there's a bigger royal event in Windsor, I'm even better, because it's going to be really good later when the Queen walks out of there.
This morning was an early, like 4:30 a.m. up, and I was here by about 6, just to make sure of the position. That is routine for all of us. I mean, we need to be here early.
Tim Graham, you know, is one of my best friends, but occasionally he gets a little bit lippy with me, you see, and I have to put him in his place.
The most exciting picture already is that one just there, inflatable corgi. We've all done it. not to the legs of that, though.
You'd love to be inside, what are you doing, you know, just looking at her opening her cards and talking to President Bush and John Howard and all that. You'd love that, but you can't have everything, so we'll settle for this.
As with all royal walkabouts, the photographers are herded into positions carefully chosen by palace officials to give the snappers the best angle on her royal birthiness. At least that's the idea. But the press aren't always chuffed with their allocated pen. Where they think they should go and where the palace put them isn't necessarily the same place.
Just go down a little bit, just a little bit. You're right in the way. Come on.
I've taken on.
You can't actually actually see the Queen on the birthday round.
Well, you can move them down if you want. Can't help
You move us there, we can't see the Queen equally as well.
It's not my fault, I'm sorry. The Buckingham Palace have set this up, not me. I'm
In
doing
a
the
situation where we
security.
cannot see the Queen.
The wily Arthur Edwards, however, doesn't complain about his position. He just changes it.
I shot down off the steps to get alongside the car because I thought the Queen was going to get in the car there.
If you're on your own, you can sometimes sneak into somewhere where, you know, you're not supposed to be, or you're just getting into a better position.
Of course, my colleagues saw me there. They all tried to come. The police stopped them and they said, "Oh, Lee's there." And of course, I got hauled out by the police.
Should we go photograph now?
Well, I was doing all right there till the new lot running out for me. They grassed me up, the dirty rats, but, you know, I'd have done it to them, so I can't complain. You know, this is a dog-eat-dog situation, and they certainly... But I got away with 1 or 2 pictures before they caught me, so that wasn't too bad.
For those who towed the line and didn't get what they wanted, there are only excuses.
Just trying to handhold the big lens, and that's the... You feel the weight of that. You're trying to handhold that, and you're working at sort of distance of several hundred yards, trying to get the picture of the Queen with the crown. It's extremely heavy, and trying to keep a good steady photograph.
The real nail-chewing moment comes when the pictures are zipped off to the editors, and the photographer discovers whether or not he's pulled off a corker.
It's a nice portrait. It's the sort of portrait you want for birthday day. It's just the way it goes sometimes. You think, well, have I got anything great? But then you come back and you find there is something there better than you thought. Sometimes it's the other way around. You think you've got something good and it proves not to be as special.
You know, the Queen is always aware where the press is. She's no fool. She knows exactly where you are. And she's not going to look straight at you and say, "You're getting a good picture, Arthur." But she's going to look in your direction and she's going to smile. And I was looking at some of these pictures really close, you know. I don't know what she puts on her face. I hope she gives me a bucket load one day, because I really like to look like that at 80.
There's a really nice picture here on the walkabout. I just like this because she's very sort of lively face, the crowd's all laughing with her. And the only way I could get that was for leaning way out of the press pen and sort of shooting down the walkabout. That immediately blocks everyone else behind me. But that's tough. Yeah, they do exactly the same. And it made, for me, my nicest walkabout picture today.
The question is, whose picture will be the one that gets tomorrow's front page?
That's quite a nice picture. I really like that one. That's a real... This one's a real cracking smile, so... I think the Queen's smile is the picture. But who knows? I'm not the editor.
Now, Ian Jones has had quite a few front pages this week. Today I don't think so. There's so many pictures from so many angles.
2 days later, the photographers returned to Windsor to wait for the royal birthday party to spill out of St. George's.
Good morning. Lovely day.
What was the last thing you said to us on Friday?
Something about no, I didn't have a front page picture. Sorry, James. Yeah,
You did?
I know, did.
Oh.
I was very lucky. I suppose one of them just sort of fit the bill for the day, really.
Despite the struggles over the last 50 years, the press and the royals seem to have reached a truce. The paparazzi have been largely banished to celeb land, leaving the royal press photographers to give us the candid but respectful pictures we seem to want. And since this birthday is a bit of a biggie, the palace have called upon old favourite Lord Snowdon to take the official portrait.
Interestingly, on the latest Snowdon photograph, she went to him for the first time ever, because he's not been well and he's having trouble walking. So she went to his house, which was great, nice touch, and again, a very, very relaxed photograph of the Queen. There's always something in her eyes, a warmth in her eyes when she's photographed by Snowdon that is missing with photographers that she doesn't have any relationship with.
Snowdon's would have been the only official portrait commissioned for the Queen's 80th. But a daring phone call from one octogenarian to another made this royal birthday stand out as quite distinct from any other.
Sort of slightly frivolous remark. Hadn't wished I hadn't opened my mouth. I said, why not get one 80-year-old to photograph another 80-year-old?
It was Jane's own idea. She, being 80 herself, she decided that wouldn't it be a bit of fun if she shot the Queen for her 80th birthday. And then, of course, when the news came from the Palace press office that they supported the idea, her confidence nearly failed.
I could have kicked myself. It was just so frivolous at the time.
It was perhaps surprising that the palace agreed to let Jane take a portrait of the Queen. She works in a very informal way. She uses a 40-year-old manual camera, black and white film, and shoots in available natural light.
I think what she does, which is deeply insightful portraits of people, it's almost like the camera to her is incidental.
I'm just a one-shot photographer, really. There's only just one in the bag, and then I'm fine. I don't want dozens. But I work on instinct. And I think I'm very alert. I think I'm very alert, and I'm very quick, and I'm very beady. So I can spot any little eccentricity or off-guard moment. I think that's probably where I am good.
There's, on the face of it, I mean, technically and in terms of props, there's nothing to her pictures. They are pictures of the utmost simplicity, and in a sense that's the hardest thing to pull off in photography.
In a conversation with Jane one day, I was trying to sort of figure out, because it's very complicated to figure out what she does, because on the face of it, technically, it seems so simple, and yet she comes back with extraordinary images of people, which are deeply respectful. And I was pushing her on this one day, and she said, Luke, when I look through a lens and I see the person and they look back at me, I absolutely love them for that minute, and then I'm gone.
I like light in the eyes. So, I mean, you know, the lighting, that, I mean, it was perfect. So when I'd got that light there, I was home and dry, you know, and I had to work on it as quick as I could.
I find it one of the most tender and touching and engaging photographs that I have ever seen of Queen Elizabeth. It's a beautiful, very simple, but a beautiful and very warm portrait.
I mean, royal photography is by definition a formal kind of way of representing. It's about the monarch and how he or she wants themselves to be represented to the world. Jane can do that, but what she managed to do with the Queen was do a proper Jane Bound portrait, which catches this nice sort of informal moment, and the Queen's side face looking downwards with these sort of nice hazy elements in the background and strong contrast, beautiful light, a classic Jane portrait.
It would seem that in going along with the whim of an 80-year-old celebrity snapper, the Queen has once again chanced upon a rare moment of clarity in the projection of her image. Just as Cecil Beaton did for the Queen Mother after the abdication crisis in the 1930s, and Mario Testino did for Diana after her divorce from Prince Charles, these are pictures that manage to pull off that elusive combination of majesty and humanity, a balance that has, for the past half-century, been the grail of royal photography.
I think the history of royal photography over the last 50 years is all about keeping the balance between the imagery that you can control and the stuff that you can't. I think it's a constant struggle for the royal family. On the one hand, tapping into modern demotic themes without compromising their dignity, without letting in too much light on magic, but at the same time saying, I'm part of this world, I relate to this world, and it relates to me.
It becomes a question of careful management of the marketing of the royal image and the individual members of the royal family. And clearly, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth is at the absolute centre of this. Her image is ultimately the most important one, and she seems to have managed the way it has been presented with extraordinary skill.
We are now entering a new era of royal photography. The pressure to modernise and justify their relevance has kept these royals on their image-conscious toes, and once again, they are bracing themselves for the next big challenge. The sharp-eyed scrutiny of press and public will soon fix upon one young man and his far from certain future.
I think Prince William is very much the white hope as far as royal photographers are concerned. They are looking for a star to replace his mother.
I think, ultimately, Prince William will learn how to work with photographers. It's absolutely central to doing his job now. He will learn that.
William has now really matured and has taken on the mantle of, well, I am going to be the King of England one day, and I understand that with that comes this duty, and one of those necessary evils, if you like, is dealing with the press.
Whether they like it or not, photography is an important part of the royal inheritance. And in keeping with many aspects of their lifestyle, the attention of royal photographers comes as a privilege and a burden, but not something they can ever choose to ignore.
It's annoying to have to acknowledge these people, that these people are in your life and will be forevermore, just like television's in your life and will be forevermore. And so it's a constant struggle.
In a way, the press pack that follows them is the royal family's greatest nightmare. But if they didn't do that, that would be the royal family's greatest nightmare, because then the public would turn around and say, exactly what do you do for our taxpayers' money again?
Baby, you don't know what you're saying.
A journey no group has ever made. Africa at its toughest next here on 2. Meanwhile, over on BBC4 now, Jack D is going for the let's have a punch-up at an awards ceremony approach to career building. Good move.
You're taking it by the last. You're thinking of a bad. You don't enjoy your starstruck on me. Baby, you're running around like you're crazy. You go to a party and dance through the night.
11.
And the winner in the regional achievement category of...
I've got enough. You didn't order.
Well, I've only just arrived, so tap.
What do I do now? How many do you need?
I'm gonna need 10. Who is it?
Don't know, some bloke. You got a Slimbos on Friday?
What is it, drinks?
Bit of a pizza, I think.
Mike.